It's 9 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Land acknowledgement.
Your turn.
It's
back to you.
It's back to me. Okay. As we gather, we recognize and acknowledge the traditional keepers of this land with whom we share today. The Township of Southgate is part of the traditional territories of the Anishinaabeg, Six Nations of the Grand River, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Haudenosaunee, and Saugeen Métis. The land that surrounds us is part of who we are as it reflects our histories. May we live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Is anyone signed up for open forum?
Can you grab that sheet off the podium?
I would say no.
I don't think so. There's Tracy.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Okay. So we'll go past that. Any declaration of interest, pecuniary or otherwise, you can declare now or at any time. I have a few items I'll declare as we go. They're both to do with the Southeast Grey Community Health Center and the new building. And since I'm on the board for that, I'll declare interest and turn things over to you when we get there. Next, we have delegations and presentations. Ken, if you would like to.
Confirmation of the agenda.
Oh, sorry, I missed one thing. Confirmation of the agenda. Brian will move it. Do I have a seconder? Martin? Any discussion on the agenda as amended? All in favor? That's carried. Sorry about that, Ken. Come on up and.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Ken Furlong. I'm a taxpayer, farm business owner, and operator from the Boothville Swinton Park neighborhood up on Township Road 24. My audience before you today is in regards to the issues I find myself and our community ourselves in. Having experienced political life in former Egremont and now Southgate, starting, in fact, in this same chambers, I respectfully submit the issues of the day. Working backwards from today, I will state that when an audience is requested before you as council, approval and being sent an agenda would be most courteous and appreciated. I think that's one thing that I was disappointed in after requesting in the audience and not being informed. I had to inquire. So just a point. No animosity. Working backwards from today, okay, I said that already. Inquiries and dialogue have been somewhat beneficial on my part by some departments and staff, others not so much. Written and verbal dialogue as to complaints, both submitted informal and when formal, need a response. What is and what cannot be done explained. I'll just stop there. I'll just put some clarification in there. I've tried to work with any number of departments and people to make this community better. Not only as long as Sue and I have lived here, some 46 years this past spring, but my term on council was certainly educational. I appreciate the work that all councilors do. I really do. It takes a good number of people to have dialogue and communication to move the things forward. We don't always agree, but action has to be taken eventually. Council needs to set policy and make it quite clear the expectations and results are expected. When those are not completed satisfactorily, there are consequences, plus and negative. You do not micromanage. As a taxpayer / shareholder of this corporation, but more importantly, as a voter, what is expected and demanded? This lies and deceit will not be tolerated, period. We all have to be very open and honest with everybody. As much as it may hurt, as much as we'd like to give congratulatory comments to and whatnot, there is situations where things have to be addressed. And that's why I'm before you today. When our Hamlet area policing deterrence of speeding, habitual drug overdosing, insults, and threats to inhabitants are an unwarranted experience that we are going through for the last number of years. On top of that, nearly every residence and property has been victimized by theft and trespassing, and may I include a sizable area of Southeast Grey. We've got a problem. There needs to be a concerted presence and joint effort required by all parties deemed to have jurisdiction. I'm saying West Grey Police, the Grey County OPP, and the Wellington OPP. I've had opportunities, or have been in positions where communication has been done with all those three parties. What I'm stressing, and what I said before the Police Services Board a week or so ago, stop the pillar to post. It's been around and around and around. The township, over the last month or so, has done some traffic counts, radar sign, the tubes across the road, the whole 9 yards. Let's see some results. Okay, I know trucks get blamed for it, but I also are making you aware of there is some very serious noisy vehicles going through there purposely. And the amount of beer cans, our grandson took in over $280 worth of beer cans last spring that we have picked up. And I'm not saying that I didn't donate a couple of 2 Fords for them too at 10 cents a piece, but it's just atrocious. The amount of drinking that's on these back roads is terrible. As has happened very recently, as late as September 24th, 25th weekend, high-speed car chases pursued a stolen vehicle through West Grey and Southgate by private citizens. The culprits were identified when they exited the vehicle and fled. The police more or less walked away as they had expended their resources for the day. They weren't apprehended that day. These individuals are and have been known for some time. Our tax dollars are being misspent with unproductive and meaningful deterrents applied. If no one's aware, what I understand is a policing contract is a contract position plus expenditures expended. It's atrocious, the amount of police vehicles in Swinton County. Neighbors now get calls because of religious grounds. There's people phoning, and the quick response neighbors helping neighbors. We're able to look after our own situations, and it has been happening. Going on from police services as such, I'd like to bring closer to home responsibilities of council, and that's roads. Road maintenance and rehabilitation. Road number 24 was left to deteriorate far too long, and without a concerted and conscientious effort to maintain and make safe at least what has now become a major thoroughfare. I will point out also that with driving a tractor trailer with farm commodities, I have had first-hand experience and knowledge of what road requirements are required and expected. This council has seen fit to grant expended industrial and farm operations and accessory support facilities to what has been outside of industrial zoning. These are great assets in taxed employment and growing at home endeavors. However, you have not managed or chose to construct the infrastructure to accommodate it. You may not need bigger, but you certainly need better. Sight lines, location of signs, road infrastructure like culverts that neither sink nor heave. And when they do, fix it. Not put up a sign and after some 10 years still not fix it. Like the one over the stream west of Grey County Road 14 on number 24. That's a little creek that goes in between the county road and the hamlet of Swinton Park. You have chosen to put lipstick on a pig over various sections of Township Road 24. From Bethel to County Road 23. It's been haphazard, pieces here, there, pieces in between. I'd like it addressed. I would surely like this council, and certainly make myself available to prospective candidates, and I thought there might be some here today, to contact me. There has been only one current councillor has done so. We reviewed the situations one evening. The company used this past May, early June to rehabilitate said road number 24, were witnessed by myself painting with marking paint potholes that were missed by staff prior to this company going ahead with surface treatment. Even after doing the ID of the potholes, I phoned Jim Ellis to correct the missed by staff. They were corrected that afternoon. They could not identify a pothole with an orange circle around it. Where's the work ethic and pride of work? When can you turn around at the end of the day or the end of the week and say, hey, I'm proud of what I've done this week? That's been sorely lacking. The staffing of this township needs to be first hired in a proper and fair manner in respect to stated qualifications on posting of such. Not hire persons not having listed qualifications and after training, and training after, pardon me. We have seen the results of such. High turnover, unfilled, and no shows such as our recent CEO. You cannot, or should not, in my opinion, advertise a position opening with qualifications and accept something less. As a person looking at that advertising, I'd look at that and say, well, I'm not qualified. At the end of the day, it didn't matter. You apply anyway. We're short of help. Doesn't work that way. What you are doing is, as such, telling prospective good employees by hiring such, these qualities are the high mark, not the minimum. My past endeavors to identify and work with all divisions of governments is still very much before me. But rest assured, I will not be deterred from going further in the path of working through these challenging issues. If you are finding yourselves in the position of being overwhelmed, say no. You can't do everything for everybody all the time. Resource-wise, money-wise, everything. Just say no. If it's overwhelming, say no. I will leave you with a bit of thought from former Councillor Deputy Mayor Ken Harrison on the evening of his announcement of not standing for re-election. Ken stood up that evening, and I quote, "I'm a $100 a day man making $1 million decisions." I've used that in my own personal situations a good number of times. I would ask this council to do likewise. Those are my issues today. I'm not a good number of you know further background, but I'm before you to make everybody aware that time is running out. Is there any questions or clarifications?
Thank you, Ken. As you know from being on council before, you know, there are issues we see and there's issues we don't see because we're not everywhere. And so I appreciate you bringing them forward. You know, from my point of view, for those that will be on the next council from here, they've heard you, but the new council won't. And unfortunately, this is our last regular meeting. So, you know, it'll be difficult to affect very much change now on our part. But I know from when you were at Police Services Board, the new detachment commander has taken note, and he's got a different tact, I think, than the last. Like to silo things a little bit, keep them separate. OPP things were OPP, and she didn't want staff from the township involved with that and things, whereas this guy is more cooperative wants to do things together. So I think as far as problems around Swinton Park that way, I believe you're gonna see maybe more of a change now. And the big thing is, keep us informed. That's a big thing. And I know you do, so like, yeah.
will.
Yep. And go there. As far as work ethic and staffing, with everybody, there's good and bad. We do, when you look around, we've got a good staff, and to me, better than a lot around for sure. Can there be problems? Absolutely. And again, when there are, you're right, they need to be addressed, and simple as that. So I thank you for delegating. Like I always say, unless you can make these things clear and let us see. I know the issues at Swinton Park have been very frustrating for residents and for trying to do something about it, but hopefully that'll change more. I don't know if anyone else has any questions or comments. Barb?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Woodbury. Thank you, Ken. And we've had conversations at the side of the road on numerous occasions. The one thing that I wanted to, so there's a couple of things that I wanted to just clarify. What is the process if, in Mr. Furlong's comment that the OPP were done for the day because they had spent their resources for the day, what is the process of following that up with the detachment commander? Is that something that you or chair of the Police Services Board can do, Councillor Furlong, or?
First of all, I've never heard of such a thing. They're on duty until such times as they're called in.
That was my experience with my husband being on the police force, but it's a matter that we should investigate regardless. And I guess my other question is if you are not getting the responses that you, in a timely fashion, or a response that you believe you should have, at least a response of an email acknowledging receipt or a phone call back, then you always have, and I mentioned this before, copy counsel, copy the clerk, because we don't know your communications unless we hear from you directly. That would be my only comment, Mayor Woodbury.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, you're right. Contacting the mayor or the chair of the Police Services Board, we can contact the detachment commander and find out, because that's being close to the end of the day isn't an excuse for anything. Like if you've responded to a call, you've responded to the call, handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Yeah.
Well, without taking a whole lot of time up here, and I got a son that's pushing damn hard to get the beans finished today.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I heard it all night.
let me say, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, life's not a textbook, and these so-called silos don't work.
No.
And we see that every day, any aspects of our lives, right? It's communications and working together.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't need high-priced offshore help to look at a lot of these things, whether it's road engineering or a sight line to a sign or a tree that needs to be cut down. There's day-to-day people that are quite qualified to do that. We've got to give them the ability to make that suggestion and to do it.
Absolutely.
Not make a project out of everything. Getting back to individual response times to the police. Yes, a good number of us in the Swinton area have 911 on speed dial.
Mm-hmm.
And, when the situation arises where something is suspicious and you're talking dispatch and all they're worried about is, in this particular case, and I'll admit it, a utility trailer being painted and loaded on a property with a yellow sign on it, they had to be vacated. The dispatch was more worried about me being in violation of entrapment than they were the people that were doing it, what they were doing.
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating part. And when you have police officers, and I understand that they could be coming from as far as Chatsworth to Shelburne down there to get here, action means everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same on that chase that I alluded to before. There was a number of people involved in that whole situation. That's the report I got.
Yeah. And again,
Okay, and I know there's other circumstances that I'm not aware of and then
Yeah.
other people are aware of, but the fact of the matter is, it's been ongoing so long, what you've bred now is a vigilante.
mhm,
And when things need to be done, they're gonna get done. And that's what concerns me.
yeah. Yeah,
And it's the whole reputation of the community.
yeah, no,
And-
I agree.
But getting back to what Councillor Green was saying too, I'm not talking out of school here. We're all here to have the dialogue, open and fresh. The Mennonite community does not phone the police.
Mhm.
And I know of 2 situations where they did phone the neighbors. And in most cases, things happened. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yep. And like you say, communication is the key, and I think if the chair of the police services board and the mayor know of the different things, like the problems with the dispatch, any of that stuff, if they get an email and they're aware of it, they can follow it up. But if we don't get an email about it or know that you're having those problems with dispatch, as far as we're concerned, if we don't hear any of that and can go to the commander with, you know, some facts, it's hard to do something. So, yeah, any information is really beneficial, so please.
And okay, I'm not gonna belabor this either. There was another situation where I phoned one morning. There was a set of tracks. Well, they come over the hill off of Grey County Road, 41. They come over the hill, tracks went across. How they put her down in there is beyond me. Down through the rhubarb, missed the hydro pole, had her parked 20 feet short of the river, and somebody dragged that vehicle back up onto the road again. There's people that seen it, know about it. My conversation with the officer, she got called to an accident scene from Wellington County, believe it or not. Unfamiliar with the area. When I have to dictate to dispatch the 911 number and the location and everything, and there's properties, one being in Swinton Park, without the number attached, is damn hard and in the heat of the moment.
Yep.
That being said, there was a situation that retroactively could have been followed up and added to the page.
Yep,
And it
for sure.
wasn't.
Yep. Yep, Barb?
Just because we're getting into details of
Yeah, no, that's
investigations
fine.
and things
Yeah.
like that, Ken, can we get a copy of your script for the record? Because I think if the new council elect, the candidates are watching or following, I hope they're following the minutes and agendas, that they will also see the information that you shared, if that's possible.
Absolutely,
Yep.
yeah, no problem. I'll ask my secretary if she would please type it.
Say hello to her for me.
She's
Yeah.
a stickler for grammar and English.
Yep,
But
okay.
anyway, no, that, I appreciate that, and here again too, I want to stress, and anybody wants to meet with private, and we can really have a good old discussion. I've tried to make my point as clear as I can without crossing that line. Thanks, Mark. All right?
So thank you, Ken,
All right.
appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
I'm
And I
gonna
really
see.
love how you've done this. Looking back, I asked
Yes.
this morning about that table. That was really a highlight from the old Egremont Council, and reconfigured it and are using it.
Yep,
Thanks very much.
yeah, thanks, Ken.
All right.
Do we need a motion to receive that?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so we need a mover and seconder to receive the Ken's delegation. Barb and Michael, any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Let's get a mover and seconder. Why not do this right, eh? Let's get a mover and seconder up front here for NFP Insurance's delegation to receive that. Jason and Jim and Tony and Murray, if you'd like to do your presentation, welcome. It's good to see you guys, and second meeting in the new place, so it could be the first time that desk's been used for a delegation, so there you go.
Right on. Thank you, Your Worship. This is outstanding. So the best part of my job is I get to visit all the different communities within a municipality, and this is the first time I've had the privilege to come here to Holstein.
Yeah,
So thank you for this invitation. Thank you for allowing us to come here and talk insurance. A lot of familiar faces up on council and obviously in staff. For those who don't know me, my name is Tony Camiso. I work for Intact Public Entities. We insure the township. So obviously, the last couple of years I've come to council, obviously not delivering the best news, so you're probably all worried why I'm here again today. But my job today really is to formally introduce council to Carl Murray. So Carl took over for Debbie Wilson, who is now happily retired.
Happily.
And yes, very happily retired. And I know all of you who worked with Debbie, she was so passionate about her job. She took so much pride in ensuring the township. She really did. So I told Carl, you got big shoes to fill, man. Like this, it's not an easy job to come in here and do what Debbie did. So he's well aware of it. But I also want council to give him the benefit of the doubt because Carl has only been appointed the account for 4 weeks. So literally thrown in the fire here. So the good thing is Carl comes with the good news is Carl comes with a wealth of experience. He's handled municipal business in the past in previous careers, so he's really well versed, understands the challenges that we're having, and he prepared a nice summary for council. And I'm going to let him speak to it. And then, of course, we want to leave ample time for anyone on council to ask any questions about your insurance renewal and how to proceed moving forward. So again, thanks for your time, and go ahead, Carl, if you want to.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Mayor, Council. Well, I understand that we have a short time, and I believe you're going to be going through the slides, or I don't know how. Yes, on the first page. I'd like to go to the next page. Yeah, next. Let's go to team. Yeah, right there. Sorry. So that's. I believe this is one of the first time we've actually put something like this together for the municipality, because I came from a background. I worked on the OMEX accounts when I was at Marsh for several years, and also worked on the province accounts. I worked on the water. So I come back with 14 years of experience on working with municipalities. So where I'm coming from, and I understand, like I said, I have to be the bearer of bad news. That's my first 4 weeks with the firm. So I'd like to introduce you to the team. The service team on there is with NFP, a 1-in-1 tab, so that way there's a communication, the contact information for your NFP service team. They're on there. So we kind of like switch it up a bit. I came with actually making sure that there's a understanding of our partnership and relationship between IPE, your broker. We represent you. We do not represent IPE, even though we're here together. It's my drive down, but that's I already established that.
Hopefully you drive back too.
We established that. So hey, hopefully once we get down to it, yeah. So if we switch to the next page, here's the. I wouldn't call it the meat and potato, but this is a part of the where more summarizes our marketing activities on the account, the renewal activity. So as you can see, we did renew your insurance program for the policy term October 1st, 2022 to October 1st, 2023. In collaboration with NFP, we were able to secure a reasonable, I would say, renewal premium. It doesn't look reasonable from the numbers, but based on the lost experience, 5-year overall loss experience of 122% is significantly high. It's not very, what you call it, an appetizing look to other markets, insurance markets. When they see that number, they hang up the phone on you, or even if they'll delete their email if they see anything over 100% loss ratio. So one of the things is too, when I put this report together, also to educate you on the market, what's going on with the overall insurance market, and especially the public tenant insurance marketplace. I actually did a benchmark. We did a benchmark, and this is going from the U.S. to Canada. If you look at in the first section, the loss of carriers in the marketplace, we've seen a lot of the exodus of public entity insurers leaving the market due to the large losses, especially areas where there are flood zones, property losses especially, right? So I would say in the last several years, I'd say between 2019 and 2022, we've seen about 10 largest insurers exit the public entity market, right? And as you can see, flood is a big issue right now for the public entities, insurers. I don't want to go through, I can go through all this, but it's going to take up our time. But all these coverages that you see here are experienced in a hard market. There's a hard market experience with these coverages, from the commercial general liability to property, equipment, breakdown, auto, especially auto, significant auto increases. Even personal line vehicles, we've seen that on our own vehicles. Every year there's an increase on the auto. So one of the things that we're trying to do and trying to in partnership with the insurer is to put in better, what you call it, like loss control, effective risk mitigation and good loss, in order to get a good loss history, we got to have a better loss control in place, right? Because once we get to the next stage, you'll see why. All right, so we'll get on to the next page, and we'll see the premium comparison year over year from 2021 to 2022. There was a significant increase. Again, we'll see that the premium total last year was 194,994. This year is 251,682. Significant decline, but it is a result of the loss performance overall. Right, so we can go on to the next page because I want to give time for the Q&A. This is your loss performance over the last 5 years. You will notice the total losses, gross incurred, is 825,000 in claims. And there are some shock losses over there, like the fire, but there is, if you look at it over a period of 5 years, it's a significantly high number. And that's where we got the 5-year loss ratio at 122%. This stuff here, this number here, I could never show to any insurers out there because it'll put a red flag on your account going forward. So even when the market turns, they will have this. So I never give this information out until we see better performance on the account, and we have to go to market on it and see if any other insurers are interested. But this will not actually, this loss ratio will never attract many insurers. What you're looking at is profitability on their side too, right? So they're thinking, if you have 5-year loss ratio at 122%, what is that going to do for us? So they'll triple that premium to close to $500,000 or more, just to be on the safe side. Any question?
Right.
What, you spoke to that loss ratio, and it's not a good one, obviously, but what is a target we should be looking at or looking to achieve?
You know what, you can, like I said, you're still going to get an increase between 5 to 10% on losses on accounts that are performing at 35 to 50% loss ratio. It's better than what this is.
I would hope so.
Yeah, but liability losses, statute of limitations of 2 years, some of these losses can sit there for a year or two and keep climbing when there was a bodily injury. So it's hard to say what will be the best. I mean, you should be below, and Tony can correct me if I'm wrong, below 50 at this point. And this is not including property. Usually they close, it's property. But I would say it should be below 50%. That's a fair amount. That's what the other insurers are looking at, and that's what will let them look at your account. If I was to go to market right now and approach the markets that usually write the Omex and the Waterloo Pool, they would be looking for 50% or less in order for them to even consider quoting it. So at this point, Tony mentioned, he's going to bring this up, it's about it's risk control at this point. And the fleet report that was sent out, I think that starting point as well. I believe one was done in 2020. So proper risk control is what we're gonna have to start, maybe that's what we have to start enforcing at this point with this kind of losses. Because it's significantly high. I did a benchmarking on other municipalities with similar range of population and operating budget, and their losses were significantly lower in comparison. And they actually experienced a significant increase in their premium because they were between 50 and 65%. So it's, some of them are shock losses. I mean, especially auto, you know, in a rural community, rural area, you know, one auto accident, it's usually, I would say, you know, knocking with fatalities, sometimes significant injuries that it will take a lot out of the insurer to turn up on payment. And we're talking about medical expense, you know, legal, you know, expense, all that driving up your insurance costs, right? So that's something that we, the primary focus when we look at the overall performance of your account is how are we going to mitigate this, to get it down, right? And some of it is also getting some of these claims closed, but the bodily injury liability ones, it takes a little bit, you know, it depends on the claimant. They may want more money, some of them, you know, so this may go up as a result.
Barb?
Thank you. Through you. Just a quick question with regard to these claims. How do we know what are currently closed and what are currently outstanding?
We have another report that I can send. This was most gross incurred claims, total overall. But we do have another report that actually has the status closed. It's just that I had to compress it into one. I just wanted to show the total, like how many losses there.
So these aren't necessarily settled claims.
So I can, yeah.
Through your worship, the document you're asking for can be provided, but we have to be sensitive that this is an open forum.
Oh, certainly.
So due to, you know, current litigation, you know, Carl had to condense his numbers down. We can't provide details about open lawsuits that the township is currently engaged in. So we can provide a report to staff. Staff can then provide that to staff, to your council. So.
Just a follow-up, and I'm certainly not asking for details of the
Yeah.
claims, but, you know, this would appear that these have been settled. We have no idea of whether they're outstanding, if this is just an estimate, if this is, you know, it could be more, it could be less, we don't know.
Yes.
But yes, if we could be more informed, even if it's in a closed session, to better understand where our you know, people are contacting the insurance, but we don't know anything about it. So, thank you.
Well said.
Very good question.
Any other? Martin?
Yeah, through the chair. Good morning, Carl.
Good morning.
This liability, you said it's for the last 5 years. You've heard you come here before, Tony, about hard and soft markets. Was all this hard in the last 5 years? Was it a hard market?
Yes, so the peak of the hard market began in 2018. We started seeing significant shift in 2019. So the market basically, I would say, was the end of 2018, 2019. That's when the market cycle started to become hard. I mean, prior to I would say my experience, 2017, I had a blast. Just this, I could have easily negotiated in a soft market, you know. I mean, you may get, you know, I can go to markets and, you know, they wanted municipality accounts. I mean, you know, but the market started turning around the end of 2018 and then 2019 when we start seeing the rate increases, just, you know, going up. And it's not just you, it's like across, it's global. This is a global, it's kind of a global market cycle. Right? Because their capacity is provided by global insurers. Property capacity and, you know, reinsurers, for instance, they're on their international stage. So they're also affected by it came down from reinsurers that rates need to keep going up in order to accommodate. And these, when you see a loss ratio of 122%, there's also the insurer's loss ratio, right? Of how much, depending on what they're writing, right? Some insurers will have 93% in losses based on how much property losses, fire, forest fire, floods, or the flood in Puerto Rico right now. That's something that's going to be taken into consideration for next year, and the flood in Pakistan, right? So these are things that they're looking at overall. So it trickles down to us at the end of the day, because they're the one who are backing the capacity, the limit, So I would say, and it just falls right into that cycle. All these losses fall right into the hard market cycle with bad timing, right? So unfortunately, that's what we have right now to work with.
Just to follow up, if I may.
Yeah, and then Brian.
So with the hard and soft market, you keep mentioning flooding, with climate issues. Will we ever get into a soft market where we might potentially see our premiums go down?
We're starting to see shift right now, but the way we're looking at it right now, I think it's over the last year, there has been some, the ratio for insurers gone down, some insurers, right? So we're starting to see that, depending on which carriers are paying for these 100 million, 200 million claims, right? You may have a factor on that, and in terms of the reinsurer. But we are going to see rates slowly go down, and I believe through regulation, with auto, with the Ontario government, next year I believe they're going to be putting in some kind of, I believe there's some rules coming out next year by the Ontario government on the auto side as well, right? So that could impact the rates, which you see a little bit of a decrease on the auto side. But we definitely, the cycle, every market has its own cycle, right? Just like the housing market, everything, ups and downs. Excuse me. But we are going to see a shift. I can't see it going go higher. It's going to be like, there's going to be an outburst of people storming the streets, if this continues on the insurance side. So, and I believe that insurers are taking that into consideration as well to claw back the rates a little bit, and we're going to see that for sure next year.
Yeah,
but I can't tell you how much though.
Yeah, if I may add, it has to change. You're right, insurance markets are cyclical. There are ebbs and flows, and there are soft and hard markets, we all know that, and there will be another soft market. It just takes time. And typically these hard markets only last 3 to 5 years. So if we're in year 3 of the hard market, it has to change, because this isn't sustainable, not just for Southgate, for every municipality we deal with. And we go to all the conferences. I've seen you folks at the conferences, and you'll probably notice we're the only insurance company there. Why? Because we've been doing this the longest. We understand what we're insuring. We have that expertise and knowledge. So we have to price the risk accordingly to maintain an option for municipalities, because the next option is what? To go to the province and ask them to insure you. So in all reality, yes, the market will change, Councillor. It has to. And historically speaking, it's changed in the past. The 70s, the 90s, like every decade or so, we go through these market changes. So it has to change, or I will go insane. Because this isn't fun. Trust me, this is not fun for anybody.
Yeah.
It's not. I know it's not fun for you folks who have to take it on the chin. It's not fun for Carl and I, because when we get called from other municipalities, I'm sorry, we can't help you because of X, Y, Z. So it better change. I'm just saying that.
Well, change for Deb. Brian and then Bart.
Oh, I was just, I understand the 122% loss ratio is not sustainable. What is Intact's loss ratio overall?
Good question.
I actually
Is it 98? Was the last quarter?
No, it was actually Aviva is pretty bad right now. I think it's 90. No, it's 92%. And because there was an acquisition. Pardon me?
I was going to say that's not sustainable for Intact either.
No, it's
A lot of insurers are going through that right now.
I know Tony's not volunteering to do this, so I mean,
Yeah.
they're gonna have to fix that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And I think, sorry, to go back to that point, also, Intact, there was some major acquisition of insurers, and they carried over some of those losses, RSA and GCNA, two big, large insurance companies.
Yep.
So I feel like Intact is probably in the best position out of the 5 markets, public energy markets right now. Like I said, that's why a lot of them are there's an exodus of markets from the public energy space. But Intact is probably in a better financial position in terms of sharing these risks due to the size. They're massive. But compared to the other markets, they're doing a lot better in terms of the loss ratio.
Thank you.
Mark?
Thank you, through you. If only we all had a crystal ball,
I'd read a lot of Max's.
then we would know when the hard market, soft market, what's coming down the pipe.
Yes.
It seems to me that we can do everything right. We could put in place climate action plans, and we can put we could bring our infrastructure up to 100%. Well, we couldn't financially, but we're working on it. But the tendency now for people to not take responsibility for their own actions and sue everyone and everything for their own mistakes costs everybody. And as much as it really is not sustainable, as you said, Tony and Carl. If we do everything that we can to put the budget in place to fix certain roads, it could be a perfectly good road and we'll still get sued.
Yeah.
That's very true. It's, to answer, to comment through your worship, it's due diligence. You have to do what you can with the resources given to you. Your staff call us. They make inquiries. If there's a contract or a lease agreement coming up for renewal, they'll send us the agreement, we'll review it.
Yep.
So, they're dotting their I's, they're crossing their T's. Your staff aren't afraid to reach out and ask questions. And I encourage council to allow that communication to continue. It's very important, because if they're not asking questions, how is this gonna affect our insurance? What are the insurance implications? Then you're right, your loss ratio is gonna continue to deteriorate. The losses you guys have sustained, they are a little bit of a shock loss because they're more on the equipment side of things. It's not like they're purposely trying to. It's an accident. That's why you have insurance for it. But the good news is your staff, they are reaching out, and I thank staff for that, because if they don't and they hesitate or they're not sure, then you get into trouble. Because then when we find out too late, or you're into an agreement, there's no hold harmless, there's no reciprocal. Now what? Now our hands are tied. We can't even defend you, or we have to settle out of court, or whatever the case may be. So, again, and I sound like a broken record, but if you can, attend our webinars, attend the sessions at the conferences, and even if you get one thing out of them, it might prevent a claim. And if you can prevent a claim, you'll make Carl's job a lot easier when he has to search, markets. So just
He's only been here for 4 weeks.
Oh, by the way, you didn't know about the market search thing, so it's going to be hard to ride home.
Just to follow up, and to your point, attending the webinars, attending the conferences, it'll be so nice when we can get back to in-person conferences where we can have these dialogues, because I think councils in 2018 to 2022 were shortchanged on the ability to interact with other municipalities and presentations and webinars that you provide. So they were always very helpful. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Well, thank you, and I'll appreciate the education. I'm still kind of trying to get over the shock that you weren't at all the seminars and that just because you liked us. But well, I'll get over that. If there's nothing further, I'll call the question on receiving this for information. So all in favor? That is carried. And thanks again. And Carl, looks like you're going to get a drive back too. So
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah.
well, You'll see.
If you see me on the street hitchhiking, you know what happened.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good luck this
Thank
fall.
you.
Thank
For all you running.
Oh,
Okay, good luck.
I'm winning.
Yeah. Congratulations. Okay.
He's going with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks,
Thank you,
Carl.
pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safe.
I'll get a mover and seconder for our next one. And that's for Tracy, for BDO. Brian will move and Martin will second. So, morning Tracy, and come on up and let's hear wonderful news from you. Because the insurance guys were just a bit of a downer.
Brian.
All right. So I'd like to thank the council for having me here this morning. I'd like to thank Liam and Akash and Dave for all their assistance to help us get through the audit. As your auditor, we have the responsibility to communicate with those charged with governance, which is you, the council. The report that you have in your package contains all the required communications under auditing standards. Those communications are very similar year to year as they're prescribed by the standards. So I'm just going to provide a very brief overview of the communication, and then I'll provide a very high-level overview of the draft financial statements, which are in Appendix A of the report. If you have any questions, it's nice to be back here in person so that it's easier to answer questions. So feel free to just kind of raise your hand and we'll stop and deal with questions as we go through the presentation. On page 3 is the executive summary. As I said, the financial statements are in draft, so they need to be accepted by council.
We need to level that.
Keep my hands off.
Yeah.
They have to be accepted by council before we can release our final version. Once they are accepted by council, then we have to do some subsequent work up until the date of the approval, and also to get a signed representation letter from the management team. Independence, we confirm that we are independent of the township on an annual basis. Amounts are material if they would affect the decisions of users relying on the financial statements. The materiality we used was $400,000. That is based on 2 to 3% of revenues, which is standard for public sector entities. On the pages 4 and 5 are the audit findings. Again, these are very general in nature, and they are the same as our planning procedures, and so no additional risks were identified during the audit. On page 7, we have the obligation to communicate if we find any issues in internal controls. We did not find any deficiencies in the design and the implementations of internal controls tested during the audit. However, the capital asset module did not provide adequate reports and audit support for capital assets and amortization. So those had to be prepared manually by your management team for us to be able to get the proper evidence to issue the audit report. So there are some issues with the systems that do need to be improved. However, we do have enough evidence to go forward and to provide our audit opinion. We are working with your management team to provide detailed letter with those recommendations for improvement. On page 8, you'll find the unadjusted differences. They're not material, so again, we can issue a clean opinion on the financial statements. So that's a very quick overview of the communication. We'll move forward to the Appendix A and the draft financial statements unless there's any questions on that section of the report.
Doesn't look like it.
No.
Oh,
Okay.
Martin? Yep, go ahead.
Good morning.
morning.
On page 7, it says outlined issues in the accounting systems. It's just the system itself, like whatever computer system they're using.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
nothing to do with the actual,
So
no
the-
issues with our finances. It's just how
Correct.
we come to those figures. Okay.
Correct, getting the actual information to be able to prepare the financial statements. The numbers are correct, but it's a lot of work for your management team when those things don't work properly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the numbers are in Appendix A, and on page 2 and 3, you'll find our independent audit report. So management is responsible for preparing the financial statements. Our responsibility as your auditor is to give an opinion on those financial statements prepared by management. We were engaged to perform an audit, and that is the highest level of assurance that an accounting firm can provide. In the second paragraph, you'll find our opinion. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects in accordance with accounting standards for public sector entities. On page 5 of the financial statements, this is your statement of financial position or your balance sheet. That's at a point in time, so this is as of December 31st of 2021. On December 31st of 2021, financial assets totaled $23.4 million. The majority of that is in cash and investments. The cash and investments totaled $19.3 million, an increase of $3.5 million. And this increase resulted from an increase in your development charges that you can see in the deferred revenue number below in the liability section in the deferred revenue. So the development charges that you collect, they don't get recorded until they don't get recorded in revenue until you actually spend the actual dollars. So if you haven't spent the development charges on capital projects, then they sit in your cash and they also sit in your deferred revenue. Okay. On December 31st, the liabilities totaled $18.4 million. And again, there was an increase in the liabilities, but again, not a bad liability because the increase really results from the deferred revenue and those development charges, which isn't actually a liability that you're actually going to pay out. That's actually money that's actually kind of like a reserve fund. But again, the standards show it as a liability until you spend it. That brings you down to your net financial assets, which is your assets less your liabilities, and this again is a key financial indicator. It is positive, which is good financial indicator. That means you do have resources available for future. It has increased over the prior year, and that's because you've increased your reserves and you've also been paying down your debt. The tangible capital assets were $55.4 million, and those are at cost less amortization. Again, that's a reminder that is at a cost value. A replacement value would be significantly higher, but the accounting standards have us record those at cost because that's the only reliable information that we can audit. The accumulated surplus is $60.9 million, so that's both your monetary and your physical assets, and that includes your net investment in capital assets of $51 million, and also $9.9 million that you have sitting in reserves. On page 6 is the statement of operations. So this is the transactions for the year. So the revenues include all external revenues for both operating and capital purposes. The revenue for 2021 was $14.5 million. The expenses totaled $12.2 million, and the expenses include all your operating expenses and amortization, which is an estimate of the use of the capital assets over time. That's not the actual capital purchases. And it also does not include your transfers to reserves.
Sorry,
Yep,
Mayor Woodbury, what page are you on?
page 6
And the heading?
is the statement of operations and accumulated surplus.
Thank you.
So it's got the revenues and the expenses.
Thank you.
The revenues less the expenses bring you down to your annual surplus of $2.3 million. However, again, it's important to note that that is not your operating surplus. Then the operating surplus would be what you would see when you compared your actual results to your budget that was approved. The operating surplus for the year was $55,000, which was transferred to the tax stabilization reserve, and $154,000 to winter maintenance reserve, $11,000 to the library. The 2.3 that you see on this page is the annual surplus. So again, it should always be positive. You always want it to be a very large number, because from this amount you have to purchase your capital assets and you have to make your debt payments. So we take that annual surplus, and on the next page, on page 7, which is the statement of changes in net financial assets, we take that annual surplus of $2.3 million and we adjust for the paper number of amortization, and we deduct the actual capital purchases that you made during the year of $3.3 million. So that brings us down to the increase in net financial assets of just $1 million. And this agrees to the change in your net financial assets that are on the balance sheet that we talked about. That was a key financial indicator. So again, the increase in net financial assets is an important financial indicator, and it can be positive or negative depending on where you are in your capital asset cycle. The budget was positive, so that was anticipating funds being put into reserve and paying down your debt. The actual was a little bit lower than your budget, and that's really not a bad thing. The reason that it was lower is because in your annual budget you had budgeted for sales in the industrial park, and in that budget you also budgeted to transfer those amounts to reserve, so they were offsetting in your operating budget and didn't affect your surplus. And the reason that they're lower here is because the sales aren't in this part, and then you don't have the offsetting transfer to reserve. So that's the reason for that. And lastly, on page 8 is the last statement. So that's the statement of cash flows. Again, the changes in your actual bank account and your investments. About the middle of the page, you'll find the amounts that you physically brought in cash from operations of 6.7. You spent a net amount of 2.6 on capital assets, and you repaid $609,000 of your debt. So your net cash position did increase during the year by $3.4 million. So overall, the township is in a positive financial position with $4.9 million in net assets. You've got positive cash flows with $19.2 million in the bank and investments, and you have reserves of almost $9.9 million. So again, that includes a very high level overview of the financial statements. I know you're always pressed for time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, appreciate lots of numbers, lots of stuff. And it looks like everybody is. Oh, there you are, Martin.
Thank you, John.
You were on mute, that's why I didn't know you
yeah.
had your hand up.
I'm gonna get a little bell.
Yeah.
There was one part where the taxes owed is like over $1,500,000. Is there anything we can do to lower that? Like, I forget what I didn't write down the page, but there was something about taxes for 20. It was like $1,573,000 still owing. Is there any systems in place that we can
So that's
get better handle on that?
That's on page 5 on your
Page five.
page 5 on your statement of financial position. So it has decreased from the prior year. It was 2.1 and it's down to 1.5. So it's not. It's very reasonable compared to other municipalities, probably a little even somewhat lower than some of the other
Yeah,
municipalities.
that was my next question, so thank you for that.
Mhm.
Good,
Go ahead, Liam.
thank you.
Yeah, so the taxes receivable have been higher the last previous years, that 2.1 was high, and that's when we file our FAR, we are in the high range, and the province wanted us to get that down. So in the last few years, we've been quite active in pursuing collections and having a few tax sales. So that's why it's down to 1.5, which actually brings us down into the moderate range that the province wants us in. So the 1.5 is actually where we want to be.
Thank you.
Good. Dave?
One thing I'll just add to that is we did have what I would call a biggie, and all it takes
Yes.
is one or two,
Yeah.
and we solved those. So that's the difference in 2.1 versus 1.5. But, we meet frequently on the tax file and
Mm-hmm.
make decisions on, tax sale and so on.
Okay. Barb?
Through you to Liam, there's a percentage, like there's a range where you kind of want a sweet spot, and if I'm not mistaken, it's something like 87 or 91, or we were a little higher or lower. Well, we weren't lower, we were higher, and that was, as Dave said, there was a few biggies. Can you refresh my memory what that range is, where we kind of want to be?
Go ahead, Liam.
Yeah, so I believe you're referring to that percentage on the FIR. Like, so we're like, I think the 2.1 was roughly 18% of our taxes invoiced in a year, and the province wanted that to be below 15.
Right.
And I
okay.
believe the 1.5 brings us down to 13%.
Excellent.
So we are below the 15, but I'm not sure 13, but we're definitely below the 15 now. So we're in the acceptable range now with province.
Good job. Congratulations.
Yeah, maybe another thing I'll just throw out there is we've been diligent at where we've had accounts receivable that was related to a property. It might have been for off-site work that was to support the property. But we've been very diligent at transferring those off AR and putting on the tax file, because you're very vulnerable if they sell their property on skipping on those kind of things. So if we attach it to the property, it follows the property, we create our interest at a pretty high rate. But so we've had some things settled out there because of that interest rate being a bit high, forcing payment.
Super. Go ahead, Liam.
I just want to add, to comment with the general receivables, that's one thing that sort of skews our percentage a little bit, because the province assumes that your taxes and receivables is just taxes, like your tax bill. However, when we transfer general receivables to the taxes, that makes them like taxes, but they're not technically taxes. But so that's why our receivables are a little bit higher in the years. But as the CEO has mentioned, we have actually started collecting some of those from those individuals.
Okay, not seeing.
One more.
One more?
One more, thank you. This is for you, Tracy. Nice to see you again. In your representation letter, you state you've disclosed, I wrote it down, that you've disclosed all information relating to allegations of fraud or suspected fraud. That's a generic statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and you stated earlier that there's no indication of fraud.
Correct.
That's good. And if there was, you would be reporting that to council in closed session. For the benefit of all of council who may not have asked that question before.
Yeah. And just to clarify, the representation letter, the sample that's in your package is actually the representation letter that management signs to us. So it's their representation to us, and that's required under the accounting standards.
Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any further questions. I'll call a question. All in favor of receiving the report? And that is carried. Thank you. So thank you, Tracy.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank the council for the opportunity to work with the township. I have served the township and its former townships every year of my 35-year career at BDO. So it's been a pleasure to work with you, and if you ever need anything, please contact me.
Well, thank you, Tracy. Absolutely. And it's been really good for us to work with you and to, you put things in a way that even I can understand it. So it's been a good relationship. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Need to fix that too. For the floor.
Yeah.
It used to be level when it was in the
Yeah.
center.
Yeah.
Now we've moved.
Yes, the council chambers do look, it's nice to be back after, I was here originally.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
way back.
We say we recess for 10 minutes, 20 after, and then when we get back at it, we got quite a bit of stuff, so we'll get back at it full force. Call the meeting back to order, and like I say, it's got quite a bit on here, so we'll get moving through it as we can. Need a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes from before. Barb and Jason. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried.
So I have to remember to put my hand up.
Yeah, yeah. I put my hand up and then don't count me. Now we've got some of Liam's reports. And Akash, I just did want to mention being the best dressed person here.
Wait.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
he's not running for office.
Touche.
Yeah, he's already got a job.
Just because he's got more hair.
Then who? Okay, Liam's reports. 8.1.1, the financial report for 2021. I need a mover and seconder to put it on the floor. Martin and Jim. Morning, Liam.
Morning. All right, so the basic purpose of the report is just sort of the monthly reports and the budget that council usually sees is always prepared on a fund accounting basis. And this report is just to sort of provide the link between those reports, monthly reports, and the financial statements that you just got presented. So on a fund accounting basis, the surplus was nil, both the tax support departments and non-tax support departments, because of the contribution to the reserves that were mentioned in the presentation. And then as the PSAP surplus is $2,308,895, and as Tracy mentioned, that's due to capital purchases and loan repayments and stuff that is on the balance sheet as opposed to as an expense, which it is for funding, and that's the main reason for the difference. So that's just like then the auditors would like the financial statements to be approved as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Barb?
Just one is more for clarification. When the public sees these reports, the two, you've explained it well, and certainly the $2,308,000 annual surplus is not us overtaxing. It's the actual leftovers was the smaller amounts, correct?
It's that $2 million is basically the cash that got raised to buy the capital assets, to
Right.
oversimplify the
Yes.
answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a big discussion on this. I mean, that's very misleading to the
It
public.
is.
And it doesn't state anywhere until you get to Liam's report where that 2.3 million is gonna go.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
you know, that's tax stabilization reserves and all these other things. But the big thing is the contribution to other reserves or capital.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll call a question then. All in favor? And that is carried. 8.1.2, need a mover and seconder. This is asset management plan. Barb and Jason? Okay,
Thank you, Your Worship.
can you say that again? That was good, I enjoyed that.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a pretty straightforward report. It's effectively what we are recommending is an update to the asset management plan to include the building facility condition indexes. This was a requirement under the SCM grant, which we had received. If there's any questions to the plan, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, are there any questions? Barb?
Through you, could you explain that there's going to be a revision with regard to 2021 references?
Definitely.
And then I also have another question. On page 33, it's more of a comment. Page 33 of 57, it recommends that Southgate study traffic volumes on its gravel roads closely. I actually support this recommendation. My first question was going to be, do we have, and maybe this is for Jim, also, do we have a benchmark of what low traffic volume is for a gravel road, what moderate traffic volume is for a surface treated road, and of course, a paved road, in order to give us that benchmark? Because with the increase in shops, the increase in farm equipment traveling the roads from farm to farm, and with the commuter traffic, people choosing to live up in this beautiful municipality but still commuting to cities, our volumes have increased. And we hear it very much so right now that roads is got to be a priority, so we need to make sure that we're putting the money in the right area. And Jim, you and your staff do a great job trying to work with aging infrastructure and keeping it flowing.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Dobreen. Yes, so further to our email exchange yesterday, there are some references to the 2021 Asset Management Plan in this plan as well, and it refers to this plan as being the 2021 plan. As discussed, this is an oversight on my part, and if Council were to approve the Asset Management Plan as amended, staff would go through the report and fine-tune that before posting publicly. As for the thresholds on gravel roads, I will defer to Jim on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Good morning.
Good morning, good people. So that traffic count study kind of ties in with the classification of roads with municipal maintenance standards. And so if you don't have an actual count, generally there's some grouping with assumptions with 0 to 99 or 0 to 50, 100 to 200, and 500 to 1,000. We have been doing a lot of traffic counts on basically paved roads. It's difficult to use that technology with the hoses on gravel roads, as the stones end up getting a hole into the lines, and then they're no good or whatever. But we've been looking at another technology that is more radar based, and that's in the neighborhood of about $8,000 to get that traffic counter that way. Again, it's not like the radar speed sign we have, but it can pick up those vehicles and get information that way. So we are looking into it, and it's on our radar to get into that kind of technology. And then we'll get more gravel road counts.
Follow up?
Yep.
Yeah, the only other alternative is to get some students that need some volunteer hours to sit at a intersection or a stretch of road and count the vehicles, I guess.
That's it.
I like keeping our radar on the radar better.
Thank you, Jim.
Any other questions?
I have one, Joe.
Okay.
Through the chair. Cash, there was one part of the section 6, page 159 of your report. A portion of any net year-end operations surplus to reserve climate impact recoveries. With what we heard with the insurance this morning, what kind of percentage hypothetically do you think would be going into that?
That's a terrific question.
Depending on what the net is, obviously.
Right. It's hard to assign a hard number to that. At the end of the day, I think we need to realize our asset management plan is in the initial stages, so it's hard to give those hard numbers on this. So as we develop our asset management plan and gather more data, it becomes a lot easier to say this is what we should be assigning to this particular component. So, if you can bear with us while we update our asset management plans, as we're aware, we do have 2 updates within the next term of council in 24 and 25, by the end of which we should have a fully functional and fully funded asset management plan. So the hope and the goal definitely is that by 25 I will have a better answer to your question.
No, it was just good to see that natural assets were actually playing a part in it too, so that's fine.
Mhm.
May I have one more for
Yep.
Jim? Our roads are 4 and 5, you said rating, does that, like 1, 2, 3 in the city, 4 and 5, because of that type of road, does it make it more difficult to actually get funding from the government through the gas tax or whatever? Like, do they really look at the rural municipalities the same way with other bigger communities for getting more money? Because we're at 48.3% underperforming for all the structures, but then the province is spending 10 billion on a highway where they could be getting that 10 billion to all us for managing our roads, so.
Go ahead, Jim.
So a class 1 highway is like your 400 series highways, and then the class 2 again is based on speed and your traffic volumes basically.
Okay.
So, but class 4 and 5 roads, they don't weigh in too much to your funding formulas and mix that way. Again, it's just based on what the speed and what the traffic counts are, so, and the surface type, but class 6 road is basically no winter maintenance type roads, so those ones typically we're not looking for funding to work on those type of a roads, so I don't think there's any impact or play with funding with the classification.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian?
Thank you, sir. Just looking through the asset management plans, and it's very comprehensive, but I'm wondering, there's no accounting for the value of the landfill sites, unused volume. Is that something in the future that would be listed as an asset
So, again.
or valued as an asset?
Like I said, by 2025, we will have to have a more comprehensive plan that includes all our assets,
Right.
all the municipal assets. So, yeah. It would.
I guess the point, and maybe I'm not being clear, but the point I'm trying to make is, it's the landfill site. You could value it as simply land value, but it has so much more value than that because of unused capacity in that for waste.
Right.
If you value that as to its value as a
Commodity.
That would be a huge value in terms of dollars and cents, I would think. So I would like to see that reflected in this eventually.
Okay, I will take that back and I'll double check with what the best practices around Bruce Spray are.
Excellent.
And see if other municipalities are looking at that as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for clarifying. That's clarified.
Dave?
I mean, that's an excellent question. At this point, this specific portion that we needed to do was about sticks and mortar.
Yep.
Buildings and infrastructure, like, it got a little bit silly. I mean, we even did the house across the road from the landfill that is attenuation zone, got holes in the roof, but it's still a building that we need to assess.
Right.
So we put that in more as a tear down, obviously, when the tenant moves out, but, eventually, when this thing gets fully robust, it will have all your assets that have value to the township going forward in some fashion.
Great. Well, again, my point was, I think it's important that we note that that does have very significant value.
Some have value and some don't. Like Proton obviously doesn't have a lot of value because it's still in a, deteriorating mode.
Yeah,
But
in terms of
definitely,
capacity.
the capacity at the Agrabah landfill is a huge asset for this
Right.
municipality.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Mover and seconder for the bylaw for that,
As amended.
as amended. Yep. Brian and Jim? Any questions or comments on the bylaw as amended? Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Next, we have the 8.1.4, the budget. Mover and seconder, please. Martin? Michael? Okay. Oh, taking your toys and going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about to throw them out of the pram, but.
Oh, well, okay.
Well, you're not staying for the whole meeting?
Sorry?
You're not staying?
Unfortunately not.
Oh. Okay, Liam.
Yeah, so this report is just bringing forth the timeline for the 2023 budget. It was the council calendar for 2022 was published with the first budget meeting happening November 23rd. And then the next one being November 30th. However, the November 30th date was in conflict with the county meeting, so we're proposing that to be changed to November 29th. As well as staff wondered if current council wanted to review the capital plan in advance of the new council reviewing it. So if so, we would add the November 2nd date as well.
Okay, comments? Barb?
Through you to Liam. So in the past, maybe this is a clerk question as well, in the past, with a council-elect, because at that point you'll know who the new council is, they've always been included in those preliminary budget discussions. Is that the intent, to have them invited to that advance meeting, or is this the outgoing council having a look at a budget that we have no ability to approve?
Yeah.
Through the mayor. I can only speak to 2018 when I was here. I don't believe we did them before council-elect, but I think we just wanted to have this council take a look at it and maybe make some recommendations to council-elect. They wouldn't be invited to the March 2nd, or the November 2nd, pardon me, meeting. That would just be for this council. I mean, they can sit in and get the materials from the agenda and such, but that was our intent. Maybe Liam or Dave can speak further on that.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, just again, so that we don't have a new council with their eyes glazed over, that this budget would have some level of capital oversight by the previous council. You've had 4 years of knowing the if, ands, and buts of what's going on here. And so we just advance a document that has some oversight for the new council to finally approve. They would have full decision on the operating budget, because that wouldn't start till December. But to try to keep with our timelines that we've done in the past, to still get that budget completed in February or early March.
Okay, Barb?
I guess I am struggling with it because as an outgoing council, we're in lame duck. We can't approve and we can't commit a new council to anything more than $50,000. I have an issue with it not including. I don't know what you just said, Dave, is to put forward a recommendation to the new council, and then they would have oversight over the operating budget. Maybe I misunderstood.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not approving the capital budget. That's going to be their, I mean, when they approve in February or March, that's approving the whole budget. The capital portion is a really important piece that we usually start in this time of year. So we want to start that process. And with your knowledge base, we don't want to lose that, knowing what's gone on in the last 4 years, to give some level of endorsement support that you advance this capital budget to the next council to consider. But you would not be approving it.
Brian?
I think it's important that this council at least start the process. As Dave mentioned, we do have 4 years of experience to look at the budget. I remember when I was first elected, we sat in on, I don't know, 1 or 2 budget meetings. We didn't participate,
Right.
but we sat in on it, and I think that's important too, to give the new, or the council-elect, give them an opportunity to come and listen in. I'm actually kind of surprised there's none of them here today, but nonetheless, that's my feeling on it.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. And it does fall within our purview, time-wise, to get things going and helping, as long as we keep that in mind as we're doing it is that's all we're doing is setting things up for the next council a bit to help. And they can go from there. But yeah, that's been my experience in the past as well as the new councillors or the ones running for it would just come to the public meeting like today is, and that way they'd be able to follow through and it'd be a less pressure type of thing for them. They can sit there and figure their things out. Barb?
Yeah, I guess my memory is 4 years older, obviously. It's, but my recollection is that the council-elect was invited. They were paid to attend. They didn't get involved in the debate, but they were encouraged to participate in the preliminary budget discussions, well, the sessions, in order to advance it so that we can get a budget approved by February. I'd have to go back into my schedule, but Lindsay, you have a better recollection and record of what transpired in 2018.
Yeah, through the mayor, the 2014 to 2018 council, this would have been their last meeting, at this stage
Yes.
before the election. It was just council-elect for any budget. So it is different what we're proposing. But just with reasons we stated, I think that's why we want to do it. But it hasn't been done in the past, at least the last term, that way.
So I'm not mistaken, it was council-elect
Yeah,
that
you're not
started
mistaken.
the process of
That's
having
correct.
budget deliberations.
Yes. So we're proposing the current council after the election still have a meeting to at least see it and.
Thank you.
Jason?
I agree with Barb and Brian. I get what you're saying. I think if we have it, we should, I would almost say make them be there too, well, not make them, but you know what I mean? I'd feel more comfortable if everybody was involved going forward, but I definitely agree, they should be involved, I think. When we can't make a decision anyway, but.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Woodbury, I have no problem inviting them. I mean, they wouldn't be, it'd be before inaugural, so they wouldn't technically really be, and this term is still until November 15th, so, I mean, per diem wise, I don't believe we would pay a per diem for them to attend. It would be up to them to attend, I think, but I have no problem sending it out to them, but I could be wrong, but I don't think that they'd qualify for a per diem and attend that way.
Michael?
Yeah, I think that if you're all out, it'd be a big round table discussion so they can see where we are coming from. So that, the more people you have on an issue, it's better. I mean, if they don't want to come, that's their part. But I think I would definitely open it up to them just to see if they want to participate in it. I think in 2018, I was sitting in the chair out there, before and after, just before, right? Just to know what was actually happening. So, I know everything online these days. They can listen to everything, but it's not the same.
No.
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, I think you have to remember too that what we did sometimes way back in the past, we took about, I think it's around 2018 or maybe 17, we took an attempt at backing the budget up because there was times when we weren't approving the budget till May. Brian will remember this, till May.
Made it a lot more
And you
accurate.
lose
What's that?
out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're playing for
Yeah.
pretty near 5 months of the year without a budget. Jim will remember as
Yeah.
well. But the idea here was get started earlier and get a budget in place in the first quarter.
Well, and it was more difficult too, getting tenders, getting good
Yeah,
prices on
exactly.
tenders
That was
because
another reason.
we
Get
were
it out
later.
and get it going.
Yeah.
So that's then causes the conflict of the council every 4 years changing over. But I think this is the best process to utilize the intellectual capital of this council and share it with the new council.
Yeah, and I think this falls into line with something you say is plan for success. And I think if the new council can observe and be here while we start the discussions and they see the point of view on some of the things, still their decision when they're here, but at least they'll have some background. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I was just going to add through you that it just may seem a bit odd because normally we stop here before the election, but lots of councils continue having meetings right up until the new council is inaugurated. So it's not, uncommon that way. We just haven't really done it before. So
Yeah.
like Dave said, just for information to pass on to the new council.
County goes till November 10th
Yeah.
of regular meetings and that, so. Okay. All right, I'll call the question then. Oh,
Sorry. Then should we move an amendment to end that council-elect be invited to attend for information?
I have enough direction to invite them. I mean,
Okay.
they're not inaugurated
Actually-
then, so I don't think they would qualify for per diem or anything, so it's,
Just-
they're
Actually,
public.
But they qualify for per diem for the training that you've got proposed.
Yeah, so they would be that's after they're inaugurated though.
No, it's the 16th of November.
Well, sorry, yeah, yeah, I guess. But their new term has started
Right.
technically on the 16th.
Oh, correct,
Yeah.
yes. Because the
And it-
15th.
It's just that's November 2nd, it is before the new term, so.
And I think maybe it's not so much invited as notified.
That'll be all I can do really
Yeah.
for that.
Yep.
That'd be fair.
It's up to them if they attend,
And
Absolutely.
you know.
they won't have technology by that time, but I think we'll give them a hard copy of whatever we put into the agenda. We give
Yeah,
them
I
a
can do
full,
that.
you know, agenda package so they can, you know, have paper, make notes, whatever. I mean, we can invite them, but if they don't want to come, that's the
That's
decision.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is
I
carried.
don't think a hard copy is necessary.
Thank
They've
you.
got their own technology to read it.
Okay, 8.1.5, development charges. We'll need a mover and seconder for this. Martin and Jason? Is that you again, Liam?
Yes. So we presented the development charge study to the public for information, and we had a public meeting. There was one resident that had issues with the development charges that were being proposed and felt that it shouldn't be approved. But other than that, there's been no other public comment, and now we're asking council to approve the new development charges. As they're going down, we're asking them to be in effect immediately, because we feel that if they're not, the building permits might stall until a later date if they weren't in effect immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Dave?
Maybe just I'll reflect on those public comment we received. I want to assure council and the public that we went through the same process we do every time. The Watsons did the studies and all the required work to put together a robust document that reflects our development charges needs for the next 5-year period. You know, that's meetings with staff, very in-depth discussions in relation to capital and what portion should be related to growth and all that sort of stuff. And I think you heard all that, but I think it's important to, at this point, to reflect that. Furthermore, just, you know, I think there could be some things come forward to this council in the future that we may need to refresh in 1, 2, or 3 years at DC to just, you know, tweak a few things. But this DC study is based on all the knowledge we have right now that needs to be reflected in a DC study. Some comments, you know, I think the comments that were a bit, you know, why they've gone down, well, even if your costs of infrastructure goes up, a lot is impacted on your growth. So we have a lot of housing, a lot more housing population growth coming at us in relation to the development charge requirement to put those capital things in place that should be paid by growth. So, but, you know, we may need some minor tweaks to throw some things in there that we could have to consider in the future.
And I think, thanks, Dave, and I think two things that I'd like to add to that is, one, with it going down, to me, it shows that the infrastructure is getting in place and it's less, whether it's technology or whatever, it's not in as bad a shape as some people would think. And the other thing is, if we don't do this, then when this expires, there's no development charges able to be charged for, and then you see Bev's department get building permit requests when all of a sudden it drops. So yes, thank you for that. Any other, Liam?
I just want to clarify my comment. I talked about them going down.
Yeah.
I just want to, if you look at attachment 3 as an example, it's the overall, and the urban that's going down the most significant number. The municipal wide is actually going up 23% there. So I just wanted to clarify that because we have to identify DCs per service,
Yeah.
Overall, if you're urban, it's going down, but if you're rural, then it is going up.
Mhm. Yep.
So I want to clarify that. One of the things that drove the let's call it rural, but it is more the across municipal requirement was we assessed the increased needs for roads and looked at, well, the depth of pavement we're putting out there right now is this. If we're going to increase the service level on those roads, we need to make it a bit deeper. So we did some assessment on that, and there's a development charge in there for making the roads a bit more robust in pavement cover to take that higher traffic levels as we measure and see where traffic levels increase or stay the same or whatever.
Okay, good. Yep. Barb?
So through you, the development charges process has been, as you said, robust. We've been doing this for, 6 months now? It's not like you just bring in this report and we're gonna sign off on it. We've had public meetings, we've had consultations. Dave, you mentioned that if you're looking at increasing the depth of pavement on a paved road, that's an increase in service. Services related to a highway has only changed 3%. That doesn't help the rural residents who live on a gravel road who don't see that increased level of service. And it's now going to cost a rural resident on many gravel roads. Bev has permits across the township. And now their development charges are going up $1,500. What level of service is increasing for them? I can see it, but fire protection services, that's going up 224% across the municipality, 237% for library services. What does that?
So just, we can't look at the section of road in front of that new house. We have to look at providing services across the township.
Of course.
So there is a section in roads for that difference in pavement. There's likely a bunch of other projects that have come off the books. So you can't look at 3%. You got to look at the projects of the past, what's come off and what's the new coming on. Of course, with fire service, if there's an increased level of service, we're talking about a fire truck, talking about expanding the building to store the fire truck. So for sure there's going to be, but that's going to be highly growth related because, our present fire trucks are looking after what we're doing now. The future needs this other higher level of service. So I understand what you're talking about, that gravel road, but to get to town, they use all the roads. They don't use just their roads. So it's a cooperative is how we manage these municipalities, and I hope that kind of clarifies that question.
Well, and I think the conversation is not, okay, it's going up $1,500. You're going to hear, or we're going to hear from residents saying, I thought growth was supposed to pay for growth, and all of these houses going into Dundalk, they're getting a $7,000 break. So we need to communicate it through the paper. We need to explain it so that it's clear.
So that's a good comment. I don't think one could say we were overcharging before, and we weren't. One could argue that, but that was a DC charge, and you got to look at it in that bucket period. So that 5-year period, the growth that we had, so it's just a put it in the calculator.
Yeah.
You got X amount of growth. The cost is this, the growth is this. Bang. If you're going to have 100 homes, you're going to have $1 million. Then there's the DC. Today, our costs have gone up slightly, but our growth has gone up exponentially. So if your growth doubles, then you're going to cut your DC in half plus the increase in the DC. So it's basically a math calculation. Unfortunately, you know, there is, but the province has done better at changing the legislation that no matter how much, you know, is required for growth, there's a percentage that has to be slammed back onto the residents. So those are things that we don't have control of, but you know, we do get a lot of new infrastructure. For example, you're going to see in this in these reports today that we're doing an off-site servicing, and it's called a service finance agreement that the developer has to pay for some upgrades on roads. And if we feel the present level of service is fine on this street, if they come along and they want to put 70 homes beside that street, they got to lift the service level up, put sidewalks in and curbs and close in ditches, let's say, and maybe upgrade water mains and servicing if required. So those are things that we kind of get no record on, but yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
We kind of get, like, the residents get free. We don't pay for it, but there's other places we do. But you know, it's development does support communities in some fashions, that, you know, that you have to contribute to. But we end up getting newer asset values sooner than we normally would.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, I think that it just left my mind. I don't think, obviously. Thank you, Dave. I really do appreciate that we need to get the information out there, and that, you know, the good thing is that we didn't make the calculation. There's a professional who knows all of the ins and outs of development charges. And to Mayor's point, if we don't pass this today, we don't get to charge anything, so.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good.
Maybe one thing I'll add to it, because I kind of referred to it a little bit earlier in my discussion with council on this, but don't be afraid in the coming year or two to open that DC bylaw up again and get it more perfect than it is today, because it's a working document. We are talking right now, Public Works and our engineers, about you know, fire flow. Right now, we've got an old system that you know, is electric, or it is partially electric, it is partially diesel, but we think it maybe needs to be automated. There maybe needs to be some main upsizing to help with fire flows. So we're assessing that with the engineers. Something may come of it, something may not. But we believe that should be a DC component. So, you know, that'll be a sizable investment for the future that will, you know, provide support to the community. Right now, we share the fire flow system with a business, and it's a bit cumbersome. It's a bit, it doesn't deliver, I don't think, the service level that we're going to need in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll leave it at that.
Michael? Oh, okay.
Mine is the wastewater services. I understand that we were probably looking back then at a full plant treatment facility, but if we're not putting enough away, like, if none of these houses coming, like, at what point are we gonna need that plant, and we're not gonna have enough money in reserves that all these guys that's in here now are not gonna have to pay for the expansion, and then, you know, that's a taxed service that, you know, taxes are gonna have to go up because to pay for the full plant. And you get all these building permits being issued now, all this development, and that money's not gonna be there because, I mean, when you see $7,000 coming out of a DC charge for wastewater, it's an eye-opener for me.
Mm-hmm. But that, just to kind of clarify there, that isn't a taxed service, that's a fee, the wastewater and that, it's not on taxes,
Well,
but it's still.
But it's a fee that someone in the town
That's
is gonna
right.
have to pay for.
Yeah.
That's gonna make your wastewater go higher.
Yeah, no, I just know that out in the public, there is a bit of a misconception that the wastewater in Dundalk is paid out of property taxes, so it isn't, I just wanted to clarify that. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so we did look at that and discuss that, obviously. So right now, with the new technology that we're looking at in the 2 phases, that we're good till 2045 or so. But again, as the development charges keep coming as the years pass on, you may see that come back in and go back up, but we feel that this is sufficient to cover it at this point in time for out that 20 years or so.
Liam had his hand.
Yep, go ahead.
I just want to first clarify on timelines. The DC bylaw can only be in effect for a maximum of 5 years. There's nothing preventing council from renewing it sooner or opening it up for an update at any point in time. We actually intended to have this updated probably about a year and a half ago. The pandemic sort of affected our timelines on that, so we're sort of down to the wire on it. But I want to say the numbers in here are based on staff's best estimates today, and then what the consultant's best estimates on growth. If any of those estimates are thought to be wrong in the future and it materially affects the amount we think we should collect, council can open up and update the development charge at that point.
Yep.
If it doesn't get passed today, it does go to zero though. That's the challenge.
Yep, thanks, Sam. Dave and then Jason.
Yeah, just if you reflect back on the actual study, on page 54, it shows that phase 1, which we're implementing in the next 12 months or so, there's $4.2 million required there. And the sewage treatment facility phase 2 is 1.7. That's in today's dollars, of course, and we're going to continue to collect. Every 100 homes we build in Dundalk, we're going to collect $700,000. So, you know, we're going to likely build a couple hundred homes a year for the next X amount of years. So we're going to be collecting a lot of money between now and 45 or 40, maybe, you know. But every 5 years, we take another look at it. It may come down to 5,000, it may go up to 10,000, but that number will get played with over the next 4 or 5 development chart studies to, you know, make sure we got the right amount. But as of right now, we don't need a plan until 2045, according to the data.
Yeah.
There's
Jason.
efficient technologies coming online all the time that kind of pushes that off, and that's one thing we've had benefit from.
Yep. Go ahead, Jason.
I was agreeing with Barb, like you know you're gonna hear about it, how our service is expanding or whatever, but I get it, when you read it, I get it. Dave, your comment there when you said the more growth, development charges can come down. If they're willing to pay that at this point, why would you bring them down? Why not just keep collecting them?
Well, that's the rules. That's the law. You
have
to. There's a development charges. There's rules for development charges,
right,
and we have to follow those rules. And they're beyond. You know, Jim and I working through that whole thing, or Liam and the whole group working through it financially. I mean, and you need to have it arbitrary from an outside source doing the study, but they follow these rules. They apply, you know, this allocation for growth and this allocation for existing benefit. But it's just based on, this is our need, this is the amount of people helping with that need based on the buildings that are going up. And that is whether, it doesn't matter whether it's a shop in the rural area or a house in town. Everybody contributes to that.
Okay. Yeah, I think kind of a really good way to, in my mind, how I do it, it comes back to an old fire service thing, and that's when you pull up on the scene, you're making decisions based on a picture. So you just take a photograph right at that second, and that's what you're making your decisions on. And that's what this is. It's a picture at a time. Boom, you're making your decisions. As we learn more, then we can adjust.
Yeah.
And so
that's a really good point, because if the study rings true, we'll have exactly the growth they say, and we'll collect exactly the money they say. But if our growth is lower, we'll collect less money. If our growth is greater, we'll collect more money. And you know, if we don't have the growth, then we don't need the services. So those services can then last till 2050 or 55. But this is the projections right now based on growth, need, and financial requirement.
Okay, Jim.
The treatment plant as it is today, does it take in all of the stormwater?
So
all the rainwater and the stormwater separate?
Jim would be best to answer that.
Yes, other than infiltration and what's getting into the pipes in the ground in some areas, but no, all the stormwater is separate.
It's all diverted away from the lagoon?
Yeah, they're going to stormwater management ponds and the new developments. The rehab on Victoria Street will have some better stormwater servicing, but it'll go to the ditches that are along Victoria Street outlets, so, but, you know, we do have some of those eave troughs still connected into the system that we've got to get out, but the majority of the water, stormwater, is not in the same.
Because once you build a treatment plant, you don't want to be treating rainwater.
No.
Dilution's the solution, they say, but you're right, you don't want to treat
That's
it.
a lot of crap.
Well, I know. They, over the years, that's what the Ministry of Environment says. Anyway, over the years, what we've done is different projects, like one thing, if you lift some manholes downtown, we had them sprayed with pink insulation, let's say, it's not pink insulation, but it was materials to stop the infiltration of stormwater into the sewer mains. Because, you know, the bricks and mortar and all that around the top of the catch basins for sewers is, you know, a bit porous. So we did that. We did the smoke testing a few years ago to see how, you know, was there smoke coming up through the eave troughs because of cross connections to sump pumps. So, and the new construction, we have leaders going out to the storm drain from the house to get that stormwater off the property in the stormwater system. So there's been different things done over the years to mitigate that, but as we build new roads, we need to improve the stormwater system to do better.
Okay. I'm gonna call the question then on this. Is all in favor? That is carried. I have a mover and seconder for the bylaw for that, please. Michael and Martin, any discussion on the bylaw? All in favor? And that is carried. Mover and seconder for the report on the new council chambers building retrofit project. Brian and Jason. And I guess that's still under yours, Liam?
So I just want to, brought this report forward to council, just to summarize what the cost of this building retrofit came in at. Mainly the last DOM invoice, council approved a bid of $145, and I guess I'm referring to pay, what's the attachment? What is this attachment 2 that I'm talking to? So building retrofit, the DOM bid was $145. It actually came in at $202,000 due to some change orders that were created, which attachment 1 details the AV system at 58, televisions at 58.99, furniture at 78.57, and paving outside at 45.42. So a total of $320,000. I will note that after I created this report, some invoices came through the AP, so this is probably off by $5,000 or $6,000 to do some infinity bill and some furniture bill that have not in here. So with what's been presented in the report, the amount coming out of the modernization reserve in 2022 would be $175,775.19, plus those additional invoices I just mentioned that aren't reflected right now.
Okay. Questions or comments? Barbara?
So through you, I know that we had discussed the technology portion was separate from the construction portion. Is it in your opinion a lot of that 53 or 54,000 overspend related to the construction, or half technology, half construction, and where are we at with the technology, because it's not installed entirely yet? So are we going to get more bills, or is this all included now?
Go ahead.
So the construction itself was $54,000, so that's just the DOM invoice for like walls and floors and that type of thing. Whereas the AV system actually came in under budget by $2,300, and again, it hasn't been installed yet, but we have that cost of it. And then the televisions and the furniture weren't specifically mentioned previously. However, we obviously needed them in here, so we went in with those. So those are technically over budget, so they weren't mentioned specifically before. And then the paving came in as the amount previously reported to council. And then all of the individual reports, council has approved it coming out of the modernization reserve in excess of that $99,000 ICIP grant.
Just follow up, so it being over $50,000, are we able to approve it in lame duck? I mean, it's over budget, we only budgeted a certain amount. First we've heard that we were tracking over, I think, so.
So Dave's original report said that when we approved the Dawn bid at 145, his overall project cost, I believe he said 200 to 250,000. That was in that report because it identified that there were other costs.
Okay.
So this is within that range that has been previously reported to council.
Great, thank you, because we didn't have access to that report easily, so thank you very much.
Brian?
I know there was, if I recall correctly, we're gonna replace the windows. Is that in the 54,000 overage?
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah, they, project timelines, I mean, deliverables, it's just a mess, but that's, yeah.
Okay. So we don't expect any significant deviation from these numbers?
None.
Okay,
None.
thank you.
The windows are the last project. I mean, there was some things in here, and you can read it in the report, but we never anticipated that this wasn't a truss span.
Right.
It was mono trusses, so we had to put 2 I-beams across here, or Bev and Mary would be under a collapsed roof right now. Like, we just had to do it. I mean, there was an entrance at where Bev was. That didn't make any sense for somebody coming in, and we had to replace the door and accessibility issues, so there were some things there, but just things that, you know, you can't, underneath where the mayor and Barb is, there's a channel cut in the floor. We don't want plugs to you know, be tripped over, so there's an outlet underneath that we wired underneath. So there was a few, you can see the electrical overages was because of some of that. We had the electrician, when they were here, pull the cable for the IT guys to make that more efficient. But it's just, it's easier to build a new building than retrofit one, and there's a lot of things that just hit you when you don't think it should be there.
Well, it's nice to be here.
Yeah. And I thought last time, but one more time. Okay, not seeing anything further, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. So thank you for those reports, Liam. I need mover and seconder for Lindsay's report on council calendar amendments. Michael and Martin.
Through you, Mayor Woodbury, this is essentially just putting into approval what we just previously talked about in Liam's budget timelines. So just to recap, the currently scheduled November 30th will be canceled and changed, as that's a County of Grey Council-elect training day. That will be replaced with a meeting on November 29th, which is the Tuesday of that same week. I'll add the County of Grey training days just for information on the calendar. And then we've added a November 2nd budget meeting for this current council to review capital and special projects. So if approved at this stage, we'll make the necessary changes and add to calendars, website, and such on.
Okay, super. Not seeing any questions or comments so far.
Just a quick question. Does council-elect understand that there are some meetings that they're required to attend? The training, the...
I mean, this obviously is a change, but it has been on the calendar since last December, so I'm hopeful that anyone running is looking into that, but we will be communicating that following the election and
Very clearly.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any others. Dave?
Just with that said, to qualify, you know, if there's a special meeting or emergency meeting required, we still could call on this council to help with decisions.
Yep. Or if there was something wild that happened, like a pandemic or something, we could. We're
not
still.
gonna participate in that.
Yeah, we're not. We'll opt out. Not seeing anything further. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks, Lindsay, for your lengthy reports.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Jim's reports now. Public Works recommendation to pulverize road sections back to gravel. I need a mover and seconder. Brian and Barb? Hi, Jim. Tell us the story.
Well, you may have heard the stories from others as well, because we certainly do. That we've got a couple tough roads, and we've tried to manage them a little bit during this since that spring thaw. But I believe that the best recommendation here is to turn these ones back to gravel for the winter here. To have better maintenance, because trying to put cold patch in or even use a hot machine on cold weather days, they just keep popping out. So we're going to still get potholes with gravel roads as well, but at least it's a little bit more manageable that way in some respect. Our plan is to currently try and tie in the 26 from Highway 10 to 75 into the paving project for next year with 75. Again, as long as we can find enough funds to do it. The side road 11 from 89 to 08. We hear all kinds of comments about level of service too. Again, a lot of those travelers are coming off of say a Wellington County road to Highway 89, and then taking that 2 blocks of Southgate Road, or coming from the north southward to Andre County Road 14. Again, a higher level of service. They've got afternoon snow removal and everything, and then that two block stretch again is a different level of service than what others are coming off of the roads. We've had some locals comment about the road conditions on that side road 11 as well. One being a motorcycle traveler. So again, we kind of held off. We patched these, but we've kind of held off a little bit as in the season here, so we didn't have to get into necessarily calcium with them and getting through dusty conditions. So that'll kind of alleviate here in the fall if we turn them back. Side Road 11, though, again, we'll try and see if we can plug it into the budget for next year, but I would think that that's maybe a 24 consideration. We've also heard down through the county road studies that they are going to take Side Road 11 and give us the County Road 14 through Cedarville to Con. That hasn't transpired. Again, that road, if it was built for the county, would be a little bit different level of standard for what their road bases are, as far as the shoulder would be widened, I suspect. But anyhow, we're not getting into that at this point in time. If council approves this and we move forward, and then whether that paving window for that is either in 23 or 24. As far as the 04 section right now, we are just recommending at this point to leave it in gravel for a few years maybe, and then revisit it at the time. We've heard a resident speak this morning about concerns. There's only so much money to go around, and there's so many roads, and especially more so Proton, that are in pretty tough shape, and we would probably see some more going back to gravel if we can't afford to keep paving them. Some of the solutions we brought forth for 71 and 24 are not, long-standing applications, but at least it hardtoply keeps the moisture out of the road and the base to help it along and keep it in that hardtop status for now. But again, I think the timing's right to do this, and it will help with operations for the winter.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, it's tough decisions, but like I'm a firm believer that you and your crew and working with the different other professionals prioritize things pretty good with the roads, and it's all comes back to money and what to do, and we've seen significant increase in costs and things and that too. So any other questions or comments? Michael, then Barb.
I just kind of wonder the traffic count on 11, because I spent a lot of time down that corner, and there's as many people going straight through as there is turning there. So just kind of wondering, if we put that back in gravel, how much how much work we're gonna have to do to keep that road in gravel, because there's a lot of people that rip down that road. It's a shortcut to Wellington 16 versus going through Con.
Yeah, and that is noted. They do have fairly significant traffic counts. We do have data. I don't have it fresh on top of my head, but we did do counts this year. I would say it's in the 800 or 900 range per day. A lot of it we know in the winters, the skier type travelers, and if they know that road's gravel and they've got their fancy BMX or whatever, maybe they're gonna stick to the county roads, so.
Barb?
Yeah, you know, it's tough decisions. Thanks, Jim. If we continue to fall short of a minimum cost of living and don't put that 1% aside that is recommended for, you know, road maintenance, you know, we will continue to fall behind on our road maintenance and have complaints from residents and comments that, you know, that get mentioned about our deteriorating roads. So thank you for, you know, making those tough recommendations. Yeah, it is a commuter road, and it's going to be tough. To avoid that washboard effect when you're coming off a paved road and making that turn, I think most people are going straight through, but you know, when people are accelerating and you get that washboard, will the pavement continue for a portion, like a paved apron onto the return to gravel on Southgate Road 11 and off of 89?
Well, as far as 89, we'll have to stay back from the MTO access point. We'll have to reevaluate at the time if we're going to pulverize, and I think we can mobilize this in the next week or two, talking to the contractor. But we'll have to look at what that looks like. I think it's a little bit in better shape towards the intersection.
Yeah. And
yes, we could leave that, but again, we'll have to look at it before. But yeah, that is something to consider for sure. But I think it's in better shape than down the road further. So.
I know that you're going to consider all those options. It just was a question that I had. I'm not certainly a road expert, so.
Brian?
Thank you, John. Jim, one part of your report that caught my eye was the tree trimming budget. We budgeted 101,000 and the actual is only a little under 30,000. Now I know the unit burned on us, unfortunately, and it's out of commission, but I would have thought by this stage of the season we'd have burned up, no pun intended, more of that $101,000. So was there a particular reason why we were under budget on that particular item?
I think it comes down to there's a few breakdowns, and again, we're into that winter season where, you know, we're not necessarily we're trying to keep it active, but if we got plowed snow, we're going to be plowing snow.
Right.
So that factors in a little bit. We were trying to keep it going, but I think a few breakdowns and waiting for parts was kind of a part of the delay. And in the interim here, we've been looking for the Bobcat type machines and other type of mulching units to get our hands on to continue at this point in time, but everything seems to be in use at this point. We've got our name on a waiting list, but still I know just talking with insurance, they're still evaluating, trying to get us something like for like. There's nothing around. Everything's either in the States or somewhere else. And we're hearing as well, you know, that some of these machines that were bought that to try and get parts or whatever, all the parts are overseas, and getting parts here is. So I guess part of that message is we should be buying more local to have, you know, suppliers and the inventory that we need when we require it, as opposed to being overseas. I know we're having challenges too with in water, wastewater. If we need a pump, if a pump goes down, and that's why we have backup ones, but if a pump goes down, those pumps are coming from Germany or something, and it's 3 or 4 months before you're going to see them. So you would think some of those critical type items that there would be stock over here for it, but they just don't play the game that way.
Right, okay. Thank you, Jim.
Martin?
Yeah, Jim, when you pulverize the roads, turn it back to gravel, are you gonna be putting a fresh layer to supplement? You know what I mean?
Not necessarily.
Not
We're going to
necessarily?
use the granular that's laid down, back down, and grade it in. At this point in time, again, we did put a bid on in a few places on 75, but that was due to getting that calcium applied to at the time, and we're not planning to put calcium on at this point in time of the year on these sections if we pulverize them. So.
And another question I had written down, if going back to gravel, does that affect the speed signs? Because Michael mentioned one of the roads, they do speed quite a bit and what have you. Would it, that would just be the travel, as you say, the amount of vehicle and traffic?
Yeah, the speeds will not change for any of these roads. All these are not signed, so they default to the 80-kilometer zone.
Okay.
So they're gonna remain 80 kilometer, we're not reducing.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you.
Jason?
Yeah, I get what we're trying to do, like I'm a base proponent on roads probably, but that, number 11 there, I actually ran a couple farms on there, and when you say 800 cars a day, I think that's even light, like I'm worried we're gonna get into some big trouble. That's a heavily trafficked road, or traveled road. And if we turn it back to gravel, I mean, the amount of traffic that's on there, I don't know, I'm just wondering if we should leave this pulverizing this late in the year till the spring and see what happens. To me, that section of road is not as bad as some of the other ones, so I'm just wondering on that section. Like, I get what we're trying to do, but that is a very heavily traveled road, and I think with the amount of traffic, you know, there's gonna be a lot more grading and they're losing gravel. I'm just wondering this late in the year if it should just wait till the spring, you know, get froze up and that.
Well, I would caution council that currently our policy is we do not pay for vehicle damage due to potholes. We have had a numerous amount of incidents on 11 last spring, and again, high-end vehicles and that, and we've denied paying anything. We have one possibly taking us a little bit further. So I would expect that we're gonna have to think about doing something else because this isn't gonna be sustainable as far as vehicles being damaged. And that's part of the reason of trying to mitigate these actions at this point in time.
Any other questions, comments? Jason, go ahead.
So when we are patching roads, why do we do a pothole here and we don't do one 2 feet from there, like Ken mentioned? Because I see that all the time, Jim. I'm not picking on staff, but we do a pothole here, and then we don't do one 2 feet from here, and then we drive down and do one there. Like, I don't get it really. It's just up to the guy that's throwing it in the hole. Like it just, I get Ken's frustration on that. I don't know. I think we can be a little more efficient doing it, but anyway, that's just to call me. I'm just worried that chunk of road, if you turn it back, I understand you getting claims and stuff, but that's a heavily traveled road,
So, I can't speak for every day-to-day operations, but I mean, we're trying to get the bigger ones, the deeper ones, the more traveled portion or whatever. I get that it gets pretty monotonous out there at times. You know, some of these operators, that's all they've been basically doing most of the summer is pavement patching. But the thing that Mr. Furlong referred to about the contractor, again, there were so many potholes. They're concentrating on the little ones, and for that surface treatment to take effect, you're to try and fill every little nook and cranny. And so, again, concentrating on, you know, from this size to this size, and then going to this size. I guess that's when, as the contractor came in, they mapped out a few spots. This is how it happened. What he's talking about is they identified, well, you better come back and do a couple more of these. It's not that the guys just blatantly left them, but again, you run out of material at a certain spot, maybe you don't start exactly at the same spot, but I understand, yes, to be efficient, but I think that's part of it, is the size of the holes. There gets to be so many in certain areas, and you concentrate on the bigger than the smaller.
Jim?
Jim, how do they go about putting the coal patch down?
Generally, they're got a blower and they're blowing it out. If it's got water in it, they're trying to get the water out too. In the winter, we've even used a tiger torch, propane tiger torch, to try and dry the hole a little bit. They put the application in, then they're doing some camping. Quite often they're taking a tandem truck with material and driving over it.
Yeah, driving over it doesn't do anything, but you've got to pound that stuff right into the ground so that all the granular material gets together. Thump it down, get it packed in there tight, and it won't come out again. Driving over it doesn't do any good at all.
Dave?
Yeah, just past comments here. You know, we can have our staff go over and patch a road, and 2 days later, there's a pothole that wasn't there before. And I guess I would challenge, there was comments earlier by Mr. Furlong that he looks at the Southgate Road 24 from Swinton to 23. And I guess I would challenge council members, because I've asked some to drive it. I challenge all council members to drive it and tell us what's wrong with it. Because I think it's been brought up with a new surface treatment, but just let's remember the surface treatment only went to the bad part of the road. It ended at, I believe it was 57. And so anyway, I just challenge council to take a look at it, and I drove it many times. There's definitely been improvements. It's not the 401, and it never will be, and I don't think we can deliver roads to that level of service, but maybe we need to consider, like what some other municipalities are doing, is lowering our speed limits to 70, because I know pavement does attract speed, and whenever we put 11 back to pavement someday, whenever that may be, it'll become a raceway again, faster than what they're, I mean, some ways the odd bump maybe tends to slow them down, but it's not something for someone to come up with their Tesla and drive on 11 as a shortcut to get to County Road 14 and think they can drive, 110 or 100 or whatever.
And they do.
Yep.
And they do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other? No? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried.
Recorded vote, please.
Okay. Well, Lindsay's getting that ready. It's funny, different things. I don't know what in driver's ed, what they teach now, but when I was taught to drive, I was taught it was my responsibility to watch out for potholes and ditches and things and not drive through them. So I don't know. It's kind of, you wonder about everybody getting sued over them. Go ahead.
So recorded vote called for staff report PW 2022-048, the Public Works recommendation to pulverize road sections back to gravel. Councillor Dobreen?
In favor.
Councillor Shearson?
No.
Councillor Frew?
No.
Deputy Mayor Milne?
Yay.
Mayor Woodbury?
Yes.
Councillor Shipston?
In favor.
Councillor Rice?
No.
By a vote of 4 to 3, that is carried.
Okay. Okay, mover and seconder for the next one, PW 2022-049. Martin? Oh, Jim? I almost put Jim Ellis down as a mover. You want to take your glasses off? Oh, good. Anything you want to tell us about this, Jim?
Well, I expected to see more submissions on this. We had lots of people inquiring, but when it came down to it, we only got 2 submissions. The one from BC, they've got some big clients apparently with OPP and Hydro One, but they're more just into GPS tracking, whereas all this telematics and everything, is the plow up and the plow down and spreaders on and all that technology as well. And they do have that in their submission, but their applications don't seem to be here in Ontario. They reference Calgary and Iowa. Again, some different standards or whatever, but our concern was mostly that the troubleshooting and the reaction time. You have to call BC and work on their hours, and then it gets dispatched to a third party here in Ontario. Researching with the Trackmatics submission, I know the County of Perth, they used their modernization fund to kickstart and get their AVL into place. It's not that we don't have AVL, but the system we currently have is not reliable. It's we have trouble when we need to find reports. It worked in the day at the start, but nowadays we can't try and hunt this guy down in Florida to get our system when we need it and give us information. And like our insurance providers said here, the risk management part is very big factor these days. I know that Trackmatics has good track records in Ontario with different municipalities that, I've spoken to many of these guys in Belleville too before. These guys come and they look after things right away. The information's there. So again, yeah, I know in previous past tender package submission here, we went on a low bid and we didn't get nothing that we wanted out of it. So again, looking at the prices, the low is not always best, and I would suggest that in this case. And again, that 47,000, that was based on the 29 units that we submitted. Not all, everything will have an overhaul, but not all get up to some of the newer technology which will be installed in the new plow trucks coming forward with their spreader control operations and stuff. But nothing but good words about Trackmatics and their performance. And the one interesting thing too there for council to consider here in the future, and we know other municipalities do it, but it's a little bit risky at time too, is the Track My Plow feature, where the residents can go on live and see where their plow is on GPS. So some people aren't in favor of it, some people are, but that's, if that's what we want to give the residents, that option's available with this type of system here. So.
Thanks, Jim. And my point of view is if you lowest tender and you're not getting the valuable information that you need, it's not doing you much good. So, Michael.
What's the company that Grey Highlands use? I know I've only heard good things about their one up there. So
They were using.
Because I know they have it on their sidewalk machine and everything.
They'll come in a minute or two. They'll pop in my head in a few minutes.
Just to follow up, just kind of wondering if we can just, reach out to some manufacturers before we accept this and say, maybe they didn't see the quote, or, you know what I mean? Like, if there's other people out there that offer this service too.
Point of privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Our policy doesn't allow for us to direct a quote, but you indicated that there was a lot of inquiry into the project or into the RFP, but only 2 submitted quotes. So it's not to say that they didn't see it, they didn't quote on it, possibly.
Maybe they didn't qualify, maybe they couldn't deliver the requirements that we have, because this is very much, goes back to the presentation we got earlier from Intact. This is about managing our risk.
Mhm.
And we have to, like, it's a very, it's not what they deliver day one, it's what they're still delivering, you know, in 2, 3, 4, and 5 years, and we really need this stuff to perform, and the ability to provide service support, you know, storage of data, reporting, and reporting has been our problem in the past.
Mhm.
I know the one that reached out to us to extend it, they wanted it extended 2 weeks. We extended it 1 week to try and meet our council deadlines because we knew we needed quite a bit of time to go through this stuff because this is not stuff that we use every day and have to get questions, but they didn't even end up submitting as well, and we gave them another week as an extension, so. Yeah.
Yep.
What's the company that county just approved? It's not this one, is it? No.
No idea.
My question was, this actually tied into the insurance, as you've already stated, and is this a legislated component as a minimum standard that we need to track those, or is this a level of service that we're providing in order to A, mitigate risk, B, know where our plows are, and be able to, I think it really does come down to managing risk, because now we would have data record that, no, they went down there at a certain time and did everything that we were required to do to meet those minimum standards.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not tied, it is part of minimum maintenance standards to patrol and have documented that you've been out on patrol and everything and meet the certain criteria for timelines, but there's no criteria to say you have to have GPS. It's just like you said, it's all risk management and be able to provide the information if you have to go to court and say, yeah, we were out here, we plowed it at this time, this is our normal time, this is our pattern. You can see that the spreader was on, put salt down. But it's all about risk. It's not tied so much to the minimum maintenance standard. It's not saying you have to have a system like this.
Okay.
It's all
Thank you.
based on risk management. And I believe it's ACE that they had up there
Yes, thank you.
at Grey Highlands.
And they didn't
Okay.
quote.
Go ahead.
Jim, on page 3, it says the different prices per unit. Then it says dash cam options and the price. Are dash cam options involved in this?
Yeah, specifically, I talked to Bev about this one, and that's the one that was quoted in here. This is something we would like to explore too, going in the future. I would say, I've seen other examples, it's more in the city and stuff, where that plow is at a set of stoplights, and they've got the green light, and then you see the car just coming right through the red. I would like to try out a unit in Dundalk. The big problem, not a problem, but the matter of fact is that they're wanting, I think it's $300 a month for data, because it's a lot of data too, you're gonna do with this camera imaging too, right? So, and they're managing all the data for you, so, that's one of the drawbacks about the monthly that has to occur, but I think it was something I would like to try in Dundalk on a truck. Just going, and out in the rural area too, but do a pilot on a truck and get it happening in Dundalk, because I think that's where you're gonna see, the shorter streets, the four-way stops, the plow truck coming with increased movement of development areas, trying to get in and out at time, more out, I would say, at those times in the morning, that it might be beneficial. Again, so much can be gained for risk management with those type of technologies as well. Again, not cheap though.
And it ties in with, again, what the insurance said. Another question, you said the system can show how the plow goes up and how much it is spreading, so this is also for efficiencies then. You can keep track of what's being spread out and what's being used and.
Yeah, currently our system that was implemented back in, I don't know, 2010 or somewhere in that era, 2011, somewhere back in that. We have some of that, but these are different sensors now than what currently we have and we've been putting on the units that we have. Which again, there's so much more to this because the real times every 15 seconds are capturing data and it's a lot more robust than what we currently have, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Any others? Okay, call a question. All in favor? That is carried, and I'll entertain a motion to go past noon, but not far. Barb? And seconder Jason? Any discussion? Yeah.
When going past noon, we have quite a bit of an agenda remaining. Would we entertain breaking for lunch and coming back? Or, you know, plugging through? I think it's worth having the discussion. But yeah.
I don't know. Well, I was thinking that, my point of view is let's see how we go with this, and we can decide in, you know, a half hour or so. Some of these might go fairly quickly, and but there's quite a bit left.
There is.
Yep. But people want to break for lunch at some point, let me know, and nope, I'm getting a lot of nopes, so, okay. So, did I do all in favor of going past noon? Yeah, I think I did. Okay, all right, good. Thanks for those, Jim. And now on to Dave's report. I need a mover and seconder to put the Flato East Phase 11 pre-servicing final
We
report.
just have a stretch break before we get into Dave's reports. Or shall I just excuse myself?
Yeah, let's take a quick five minutes or so, 8 minutes, and we'll come back at 5:02. There we go, and we're on Dave's report. Did I get a mover and seconder for the first one? No, so it's 8.4.1, Brian and Martin. So this is the Phase 11 pre-service agreement final report. Anything you wanted to add on that, Dave?
Just that this is bringing it for bylaw approval. The LC amount has been certified by Triton as a number that is viable, and also they've reviewed the documents as far as the reports and the designs, and have provided the report and the LC calculations attached.
Okay, comments or questions? Okay, I'll call one then. All in favor? That is carried. Need a mover and seconder for the bylaw. Martin and Jason, any comments or questions on the bylaw? All in favor? That is carried. Mover and seconder for 8.4.3, that's Midwest Co-op lease agreement. Mover and seconder, Brian and Michael? Anything on this, Dave?
Just that we've made the changes suggested by council. Instead of 2%, we've changed it to COLA, and that's been sent to Midwest Co-op for their looking at it.
Okay, Brian?
I just wanted to say thank you, I appreciate that.
Me too.
I think it's fair for everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Okay, Jason?
How soon are they thinking of tearing the old one down and build?
It's if all the things, I think they want to get all these issues put to bed, which means also the ownership of the property, and we're already in dialogue with the county discussing that. But likely next year if possible.
Not seeing any others. All in favor? That is carried. And now,
Point of privilege.
Yep.
Can you call for all opposed when not everyone's hand goes up, please?
well, opposed or no vote or add up to both the same thing, so if you abstain, it's still a no vote, is what it equals.
For transparency, anyway.
Okay, I've been this transparent with it, doing it the same way for 4 years. I'm not, my last meeting, I'm not gonna change, okay? It's, you could, with the new council, if that's how they wanna do it, that's fine, but. Now we have the bylaw for that. Brian and Martin, any discussion on the bylaw? Okay, all in favor? That is carried. Next is the South Grey Housing Corporation group update report. Mover and seconder, please. Michael? Brian? Okay, Dave?
Just because this is the last council meeting for this term, just wanted to provide an update on where things are at, that, you know, just a new term of council likely should consider 2 members to be appointed to kind of a working group committee. The CEOs are kind of stick handling this for the 4 municipalities right now, but that's where we see it going. They all have the terms of reference for dialogue, and there will be some discussions, I know, in other municipalities, you know, in the remaining term, but that's really the status of it for this term of council.
Okay. Brian?
Dave, is there any, thank you, John. Dave, is there any thought of calling the South Grey Nonprofit Housing Corporation? Or, I mean, I think that's the intent, is it not?
For sure, it's not for profit.
Right,
For
so
sure.
I wonder if that should be in the name, just a thought.
Okay, I mean, I think, I know we're in a position to make that change, or it might, but I think we'll put it down as a discussion
Yeah,
point for
yep.
the new group.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Any others?
And sorry, just, I'm thinking as I'm writing here, but I think that would be definitely a discussion in the incorporation of the company.
Yep.
You know, that would be obvious what it would be, because there's gonna be no shareholders per se, other than, I guess, the reporting to partners we 4 municipalities.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, not seeing any more hands. I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Okay. CEO update report. Mover and seconder, please. Jason and Michael. We'll go to you, Dave.
So the main reason for this was just to kind of throw together some stuff that I've been working on in the past, or we have been working on, but the main one here is police service enhancements. You know, we had discussions with the acting detachment commander, and there's been it's kind of funny that just after I put this report in, we get the police service, or the police service cost estimate for 2023, which is in your budget. There's nothing in there about an option for it, like we had talked about. So I guess that's been dropped, but I wonder if, you know, this council has any, not necessarily, well, maybe direction. Do we want to have that as a consideration in our budget as an option in operating for the new council, or advance that discussion with them?
Barbara?
No,
And-
Brian was right.
Okay.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I haven't been maybe specific enough. That was this dedicated sergeant for Dundalk, and that would basically work out of the ESO office, and would kind of manage, you know, Southgate for us. You know, just being in Dundalk wouldn't, I'm saying Southgate, not just Dundalk, but,
Same answer, yes.
yeah, okay.
Because I think it's something that we need or the council needs to consider, and I think it's something that the community needs to see, because they're asking for that level of
Yeah.
service,
Yeah.
but they also need to understand what it's gonna cost.
Yeah,
Because I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard it already, knocking on doors. Where are the police?
Yeah.
There's so many issues that need to be addressed. We heard it again this morning. I don't know if a dedicated sergeant's gonna solve that, but it can't hurt. But we need to know, we need to have that discussion, I think.
And I'm sure, like, from initial discussions, it's gonna be $250,000 to put that in place.
Well, and if that's the cost and the community supports it, then have at it.
The
But-
one frustrating thing that I found very, very frustrating was the person would start in Chatsworth, and last time I drove it, it's about a 45-minute drive to get to Dundalk. So that's gotta happen every day, 45 down, 45 back. So pretty well knocked off 2 hours of an 8-hour shift, but that's a discussion I think we need to.
Perhaps,
Sure.
if I might, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
perhaps then, if there was a dedicated sergeant in Dundalk, the shift change could happen in Dundalk, rather than having to drive to Chatsworth to make the shift change.
That's why I'm mentioning it, that needs to be part of the debate.
Right.
It sounded like it was a no-fly zone, but
Yeah.
again. The other topic is vacancy taxation for non-agriculture property. This is just an opinion. You know, we went and talked about vacancy tax rebate. We've eliminated that, but maybe there needs to be a surcharge for people that just aren't doing anything with their building to make something happen. When we see buildings downtown Dundalk windows getting boarded over with plywood, it looks bad. And people not making things happen with buildings and, you know, fire code and building code stuff, that it's just sitting there rotting. I mean, either let's fix it or get a bulldozer or something. But that's just comments. And then I attended last week a conference in Owen Sound. They have it usually every year, and this was kind of getting it restarted after the pandemic. I've been absent for a couple of years, but really good conference on talking about mental health in our communities and how young people are stressed coming out of COVID with mental health and recognizing that. So anyway, I'll leave it at that for that report. If there's any questions, I'd entertain them.
Okay, Barb?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Woodbury. I was actually going to say, you know, requesting the information is the first step to making a decision. And without it, we wouldn't be able to even, you know, the new council won't even be considering what the municipality or what the residents are requesting. And certainly they need to understand what the cost associated with that is too. So I support that, getting the information. I did want to note that the actual letter or the actual attachment to that billing letter in the consent item from the police wasn't attached, so we haven't seen it.
True story.
I thought we could put in the agenda.
The letter is there, but the attachment that they refer to is not. So we do not have the information
Okay.
that you have at this present time. And I was, I sent an email to Lindsay, but it was late,
Yeah.
late. So we'll get to that when we get to that. Vacancy tax, we've been talking about that actually, and I think it's a step that the next council can consider, because whatever we're doing, it's not working.
Not working.
Yep.
And thank you for going to that session. I really wanted to go to it, but I wasn't able to due to other meeting engagements.
There was some really good parts, and there was some bit of letdown, but it was overall, it was very good. The Georgian College is now a center for, I forget what they called it, but it was, they've done very well, and but the speaker from the University of Guelph was very good on a lot of challenges out there with young people and mental health. Higher suicide rates in young men than normal, and higher amount of young ladies with mental distresses.
Self-harm.
Very unfortunate. But that's some of the cost of the pandemic, and anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll suggest that we repost the agenda with those financial numbers, so that that gets before council and the public. There's a bit of an increase, it's not substantial, but I was anticipating there'd be an option in there based on earlier discussions with the acting detachment commander that we wanted those numbers, but I'll re-engage with the sergeant up there.
Yeah. Something you may want to put, just take a note of, Dave. is, I think Niagara Falls has a fairly robust vacant building bylaw that they require to be up to a certain standard. They got into trouble a few years ago with the hotels and that, trying to buy full blocks. So they'd buy houses and then just leave them empty until they bulldozed them all. And if mine serves me right, they had to look like the normal part of the neighborhood from the outside. So they couldn't just board them up and things like that. They had to be secured and they had to be maintained and that type of stuff. So, Martin, you had something?
Yeah, to you, Dave, the township and county of Gray eliminated the vacancy tax rate. Would we have to partner with Gray on increasing?
The simple answer, I don't know.
Oh,
This is really interesting, this Niagara one. But that's questions we'll have to get into the tax department with and so on. We may well, but I'm not sure.
okay.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Mover and seconder for Greenlead Development Reserve Capacity Servicing allocation. Brian and Barb? Anything on that?
Just very simply allocating the required water and wastewater allocation. This is a little bit different in that obviously if it's a house, it's one of each. So the study or the work that Triton has done based on the company's submissions is that they'll require 6 units of water and 1 unit of wastewater. And so they've provided an update on that approval. They've said 5.4, but we're not going to track points. We're going to, we're rounding it up. And so that's the allocation for this industry.
Okay. Brian?
Dave, at the top of page 404 of the agenda package, the line is missing a word, and I think it's the key word. It says their use is extremely what? Because their internal water use is recycled. Is it supposed to be extremely low?
Low, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? That is carried. Next, we have the bylaw for that one. Mover and seconder, please. Jason and Michael? Anything on this bylaw? Okay, seeing none. All in favor? And that is carried. So these next 1, 2, 3, 4 items are ones that I have conflict with. So I will turn this over to you, Brian, and
Do it, pass the gavel, just for the first time in 4 years.
no. If you need the gavel, ask Elmo.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Take this with me.
Just get over onto, there we go. So item 8.4.10, is that right, Madam Clerk? Is that the one?
8.4.9.
Okay. So it's the Southeast Gray Community Health Center Institutional Development Reserve Capacity Servicing Allocation Report. Mover, please. Councillor DeBreen and Martin. I'm going to use first names. I can't. Sorry, but I'll go back to first names next time. Barb. So, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Or Dave, do you want anything to add, or is this Bev's?
No, this one's pretty straightforward. It's really low use again, and low is in there.
Yep. Okay. Any questions for Dave? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Sorry, there was
Go ahead.
Yep.
Yep.
There was a question.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Is it this also only one equivalent residential unit of water?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Moving on to the bylaw, 8.4.10. It's the bylaw 2022-148, Southeast Gray Community Health Center Capacity Allocation Agreement. Would someone move that? Michael and Jason. Any questions on the bylaw? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to the Lions Medical Center, Southeast Gray Support Services, Southgate Partnership Agreement. This is item 8.4.11. Someone care to move that? Barb, seconded by Jim. Any questions for Dave? Or Dave, you have anything to add?
Just give me a second. I've got late
Seconds up.
Late breaking news here. I got a response from Southeast Gray, but they're really minor changes in wording in the agreement. They'd like to see. For some reason, I've got one of them, but I don't have both. That's the flyers. This is the medical center, right?
Yes, it is.
But
The Lions Medical Center.
Yeah.
yeah, but it's related. It's Southeast Gray. We're suggesting some. Maybe it was. Here it is.
Is this time critical?
It's not a big thing, but I just wanted to make sure we find the.
No, I mean the report itself, or the agreement. Is it time
Well,
sensitive?
we want to get it out of the way before we get to the next term. It's just something said years ago.
The reason I ask is if it's significant, then.
No, it's not significant.
Well, you'll have to describe what the issue is then. You know,
He's not done a good job. Okay, so it's in section 4, the 5th point. Said cost to be $100,000 for the dedicated space in the new facility as a donation by the agency and paid to the CHC. So what's he saying? Can we add something to the end of the sentence? Said the said donation will be a lump sum 120 days prior to evacuation date. So they just want to qualify it and put a qualifier in. They're fine with that statement, but they want to add that the lump sum be within 120 days of the, I'm not sure the word right is evacuation, but the exit from the building. So it's that statement, all they're talking about is 120 days. They'd like that payment within. We'll correct the wording, but I think it's a rather minor amendment if everybody agrees to it.
Any questions? Barb?
Through you, Dave, this 100,000, I mean, this isn't something we're committing to. It's not our cost, and
Right.
being in Lane,
Support services. It's their cost to pay to the Southeast Gray Community Health Center. So it doesn't really impact us, and it doesn't impact the Lions Club.
The only thing that does impact us is a 60-year lease of the land, correct?
Correct.
And is that not similar to, purchase and sale of land while in lame duck? We're committing future councils to a very long-term lease. I guess
we're not buying or selling.
Yeah,
I'll leave
it's
that to
buying
the
or
clerk.
selling.
No.
Is what the act
We're
says.
retaining the ownership of the land, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's been an agreement we've had for almost likely 60 years with the Lions Club now, so it's just,
I think it's worth asking, and just
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
we're
yeah.
aware that it's okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I did have one more.
Go ahead, sorry. Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
It talks about 7 units of affordable housing. Have they ruled out a possibility of a Abbeyfield type arrangement? Where there's for seniors and where you have
Yeah.
support in a community space, but they have their separate units?
The Abbeyfield model isn't something that's on their radar or mandate with Southeast Gray Support
Court
Services. Their mandate is to create spaces and, collect rent check and support them, maintain the building, not to do those other things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'd have to engage with Abbeyfield directly, or let Southeast Gray Support Services could work with Abbeyfield to have them run it. But that's not what this proposal is. Like, we've talked to Abbeyfield about other things, but not this one.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Going on to the bylaw, 8.4. Oh, wait. Turn the page. Yes, going on to the bylaw, 8.4.12. It's bylaw 2022-144, Lion Southeast Gray Support Services, Community Health Center, and Southgate Partnership Agreement. Someone move that, please. Martin, seconded by Jason. Any questions? Or Dave, do you have anything to add first?
No.
No? Any questions? Oh,
It
go
will
ahead.
be as amended to include Dave's, that one section, correct, Dave?
I've seen so many sections now.
Just like what you just talked about, that new email, like, we're gonna just change the wording on that one
The 120 days.
section?
Receipt
Oh,
of
you're
lump
talking
sum.
the previous report.
Yeah, we're doing the bylaw for it, so it'll be approved as amended,
As
right?
amended.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Try to keep up. No, just kidding.
I thought I amended something in this new report.
Okay, any questions regarding the bylaw? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Mr. Mayor can come back. There he is. Yep, I'm back, Mr. Mayor.
I'll get him. And you could call me almost used to be.
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm an almost used to be mayor. Just have to log back in on this thing. Okay, so then 8.4.13, White Rose Park Phase 3, mover and seconder. Brian and Martin, anything on this, Dave?
No, I think I just entertain questions because this is a bit of a thing we haven't done in the past for a while.
Yeah, okay, let's see if there are any. Guess not. Oh, Barb, go ahead.
So, Dave, just through you to Dave, this is a cost to the township?
No.
No.
There will be, and I guess we could say, no, there won't be, but, so let me go through
Yes,
the
please.
attachment.
Thank you.
So what we do when we do a service finance agreement or look at external work cost requirement for a section of roadway that we believe needs to be uplifted from its present service level to support new growth. So we're talking about a few homes, 10, 15 homes, that either front on one side or both sides of the road, to connect to sidewalks, to get to road that is at a good level of maintenance that, or needs to be improved, as well as water, sewers, drainage, you name it. So to go through this one, we're saying to White Rose that you need to build the road from Bradley Street, from the white entrance to the White Rose development to Gray Street. So that's a short section, maybe 6-8 homes. And we're saying you got to, road and drainage. So likely fill in the ditch, put culverts in, curbs and gutters and all that sort of stuff. $447,000, all their costs. Half the road recon with curb and sidewalks from Bradley to Gray Street. Bradley from Gray to High Point. It's too bad we didn't have a map, but that's the next section over to High Point. The problem here is that we really can only ask them to do one side of the road. To be fair, because we have done this in the past, and to me, Ida Street ended up being a bit of a disaster because we didn't end up paving. We only paved half the road to fix the section we wrecked. So we believe that the township, this is in discussions with Triton, will get a fully paved road by investing with them. They're gonna pay $212,614, we'll pay $58,830. Again, I'm saying that based on, these are just cost estimates. Tendering will likely be less, but depending on tendering, who knows? So that would be our investment to get the section of road from Gray to High Point on Bradley Street corrected. Then there's a half a recon on High Point from Bradley to the High Point sidewalk. So there's a sidewalk that would go around the corner from Bradley and continue on and meet up with the sidewalk that's just the other side of Pine Court. And that would be 194,277. Then the sanitary service repair, there was damage done by, I think it was Enbridge, to a sanitary service. So as part of this work, when the road's dug up, we're gonna get them to repair it, and we'll pass that bill on to Enbridge, and that's estimated at $7,500. Any questions?
Not seeing any. Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? That is carried. Now for the bylaw for that. Mover and seconder, please. Jim and Brian, any discussion on that? Okay, not seeing any. All in favor? And that is carried. So thanks, Dave. Kayla, hi. Mover and seconder for the electronic monitoring policy. Barb and Martin, want to tell us a story?
Sure.
Okay.
We reviewed it again and we sent it out to staff as a whole just for their review and comment, make sure we weren't missing anything or there weren't any questions. And we didn't receive anything back. There was a few questions, but nothing that changed the policy. The only change that we did make was we added the recording of virtual meetings. We thought that should qualify as something that's electronically monitoring somebody, so that's what we've done. And then we just rearranged that section to make it alphabetical. Other than that, it's the same as we presented in the draft.
Okay. Questions, comments? Barbara?
Through you, Kayla, we had the discussion that this would include council. Because we have cell phone devices. That's captured in the grant, anyone who's issued a municipal device.
Yes, sorry, and I didn't know that my report by council was added to the scope.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Not seeing anything else. All in favor? And that is carried. And then we have the bylaw to go with it. I need a mover and seconder. Michael and Jason? Any discussion on the bylaw? Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you for your lengthy story there, and where we go. Dave?
I'm not gonna act like Clint, but unfortunately the province scheduled at 12 noon a webinar session.
Yeah.
Clint's sitting in on that right now, and if we could maybe amend the agenda to delay his reports and go to notice of motion, consent items, correspondence, and so on, and bring him in after that, that would be appreciated, because it's about Bill 109. It's a really good session, he says, and we'd like to get him just filled up with information on that if we could.
Yep. Brian?
What he said.
What he said? Okay.
I'll second it.
And Barbara seconded it, and so we'll go to 9 bylaws and motions, and then come back to planning at the appropriate time. Any discussion on this? All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Mover and seconder for 9.1. That's the council member compensation expenses and meeting claims policy. Barbara and Martin. Okay. Any discussion on this? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. And bylaw to appoint additional member to Grey County Compliance Audit Committee. Mover and seconder, please. Brian and Jason. Any discussion on this? Lindsay.
Through you, Mayor Woodbury, this was unfortunately the one person here, there was an email issue with the selection committee and they did not receive their stuff in time, but they then figured it out and received it. and the person really wanted to be on the committee for this term. They are currently on the 2018 to 2022 term, and they sat on Meaford's remuneration committee as well. So the selection committee put it before us and apologized for the technicality, and hoped that we could all appoint this additional person with our bylaw.
Okay. Questions or comments? Yeah.
What is the requirement for numbers on the audit committee?
It's no less than 4, so we try to stay between 4 and 7.
Right.
So now we'll have 5.
Better to have an odd number anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Not seeing any further. All in favor? That is carried. Consent items. Now there was a couple. Was there anything pulled on the regular consent?
No.
No. Okay, so I'll need a mover and seconder for this, and Jim and Brian. Okay, any comments or questions on any of these reports?
Here's my paper.
Brian?
Just to say that the old truck looks good.
Thank you.
It's coming along.
Getting there.
Any kind of a timeline?
Originally said before the leaves start changing color.
I can
They have
assure you
changed
they've
color.
changed at his place.
But he is still wanting to get it out before the winter time. So,
And we have an appropriate storage spot for it?
yep.
Excellent, thank you.
Maybe that was a Toronto Maple Leafs changing color that they.
Easy.
Or maybe he's just surrounded by cedar trees.
Yeah, that's it. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Martin?
No, I think the Fire Zone radio show is a fantastic idea, and I hope that continues to grow, and it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, not seeing any other hands. All in favor? That is carried. Correspondence. This is the one, there was a couple of them pulled, I think. I don't have the list in front of me. You had,
I have them, if you want them.
oh, yeah.
I'd like to pull item 11.2.1,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure if I need to pull 11.2.6 because it was missing the information.
Okay. So, other than that, I'll need a mover and seconder for the rest of the items there. Michael? And Jason? Okay, so of the others except for 1 and 6, any comments, questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All in favor? Carried. So then Barb, I'll let you look through point 1 first, SVCA.
Yes, thank you. Through you, there in past annual budgets, council has considered sending a resolution to the SBCA that we receive the correspondence budget 2023 as information, and that council support the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority's draft 2023 budget as received. Of course, that could be support, accept, or object, whichever council's message, whatever they want to convey, but that's what I moved so far.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Brian? Discussion. Brian?
In regards to the various parks and venues that are available to the public, I guess as our representative to SVC, are you satisfied that the budget will accommodate, the spiraling use of those facilities? Because, the county's certainly seeing that on their facilities throughout the county, the natural areas. Is the budget, in your mind, strong enough to sustain that?
Well, barring any unforeseen weather or crisis, we are also talking about mandatory $300,000 tree removal in various areas because of the ash. So it's so we built that in. They saw through COVID an extremely high volume of use, and which is why the province has made the natural areas a mandatory core service. I think that they have given it a great deal of thought. They have upgraded through COVID the campgrounds and the parks. We certainly are struggling with trespassers and people taking their all-terrain vehicles to mud up the trails, but we're looking at those options. I think it's a good budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. All in favor?
For support?
That is carried.
For support?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then the point 6, the OPP.
Yeah, since we haven't seen it, is there, there's no real action to be taken with it other than receive for information, and you're going to update we don't need to defer it to update it, it could be updated.
Correct, yeah.
I'd be comfortable with that then.
Okay,
Just
so,
need to receive it for information.
yep, so you'll move that.
Yes, I will.
And seconder? Martin, any discussion on just receiving that for information? All in favor? That is carried. Resolutions from other municipalities. I don't think anything was pulled on that. So mover and seconder, please. Barbara and Brian, any discussion on any of these? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, and we had no closed session consent items. County, seems like it was a long time ago meeting. We had a good presentation on electric vehicle charging stations and the various levels and the strategy and where to put them and things like that. It raises a whole lot of questions on infrastructure in rural areas and how this is all gonna work, but I guess we're gonna have to see. I don't know. There's a lot of skepticism, I guess, on parts of if the grid can handle it, how people can charge and all kinds of things. So, but they've got a plan, and there's the various levels. So it's something that they're getting prepared for. Brian, do you want to add some stuff?
I was just going to say, when you mentioned skepticism, there is a fair bit of skepticism out there how this is all going to, play out, particularly in the rural areas. But I was reminded that the inventor of the light bulb worked by candlelight. So we need to press on if we're going to change the world. So every little bit helps.
You saying light a fire under it?
Sure.
Yep. Go ahead, Jim.
Just update on that subject there. We were supposed to be installing our EV chargers in the parking lot in September. I've reached out again. We have these chargers haven't come in to the supplier yet, so we are still waiting for them to come in to be able to get them. And on that note too, the parking lot is supposed to be paved here in the next few weeks, so. Yeah.
Okay. I guess the other main thing that took up a good amount of time is the both housekeeping and official plan amendments. What is it, 11, I think, Brian? Something like that?
OPA 11, yes.
OPA 11.
Yep.
For the county official plan. And there's some discussions on, it's been brought back to this next meeting, I guess. There's I don't understand a lot because some of it doesn't make sense to me. There's a complaint that some of it wasn't. Some of the planning things are going to the county, especially for servicing around Hanover area. But it was on the agenda from last November, and they've had public meetings on it, but it was all of a sudden when push came to shove, now it's, there's an issue. And so there's a real split in council on whether it should remain between the two municipalities to figure out, or just the area be designated by the county. But the county was asked to come in, like say, almost a year ago, and there's been staff work and all kinds of stuff in it. So there's different points of view, so they've held that off. There's concerns over agriculture and some of the things to do with on-farm uses and things like that. But the problem with it is that whatever goes into the official plan for the county, we don't have to adopt. We can be stricter. And so I think some of the things that are on there for that may be good in some municipalities, may help with some things, but it doesn't force us to change anything. So I think my opinion on it was all good stuff, and it's gone before the Agriculture Committee that has representatives from all over, and they agree with it. So again, it's another one of those things I don't fully understand what the objection is to passing it. And there's a couple of other things like that. So it'll be back at the next meeting for a longer discussion, but I don't know, it seems to be long discussions anyways. Was there anything you wanted to add about that, Brian?
Nope, you're good. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay. Let's do members' privilege. When is Clint's thing done?
Whenever we're ready for them. We'll bring them back after good news and celebration.
Okay. So, good news and celebrations. I'll start this off. My last regular meeting. So, I just wanted to, that's good news and celebrations for me. I just wanted to thank everybody for cooperation and the work put in. We've had a lot of good public input on different things, and council, although we don't agree on a lot of different things, we just can say our opinion and we work through, so it's good, and I appreciate that. Staff, I've got nothing but good to say. Like everything else, we have some good and bad things that come and go and happen, but the dedication is there, and the working hard is there. So I'd like to thank staff and Dave as our one employee. Working with you and working things out, and especially over this COVID issues in the last couple of years, and with the team, it has been a real pleasure. So just wanted to add that in for my good news and celebration, and just say thank you to everybody. Yay! And Elmo says thank you. I brought Elmo just to remind. It's a reminder always to me of not to take yourself too serious. Like, stop and laugh when you can. Jim.
Well, I would like to wish all of the councillors who are running for re-election the best of luck.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. That's it. Anyone else? Barbara and then Dave.
Well, from my point of view, I would like to thank you, John, for being mayor the last 4 years through a very difficult term. Wow. And also for the 4 years that we served in 2014 to 18. great leadership, and it's been great having you at the helm. And to Councillor Frew, I want to wish you all the best. You're retiring also after serving many years on council for the Township of Southgate, and I wanted to express my thanks to you.
This is my second retirement. 35 years for the city of Toronto, and I don't know how many on council.
We can't count.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Barb. Any other good news celebration? Dave.
Yeah, so on behalf of staff, those councillors retiring, I want to say thank you for your service. And working with you both it's been a pleasure. With you, John, you're kind of a retread. You were in the Dundalk days and stuff. So
Yeah.
You've seen a lot and done a lot, but you helped us through a pretty tough term that staff had to endure the last go round, and we'll just leave it at that. But I think amazing leadership and a mayor I will remember forever that I've had to work with, and I've had many good mayors to work with. So thank you. Jim, I know Jim's a guy that can be so passionate at one end and the other. It's like we're going to battle stations but the next subject that you get going, Jim is a guy just to drop it and let's go and get together and get her done. And we've had, I remember a little junket to Toronto, and I've never seen in my life a floor that's made of pieces of block set in their edge, and it was an amazing, comfortable floor for this working group in the water meter department. But we toured that water meter department. It was very enlightening because we were going through do we need water meters in Dundalk? But that's just a little bit of history. But I don't know, Jim must be here as long as anybody that's been on council since amalgamation, likely Brian too, but maybe it's because of your gray hair, Jim. You just seem to be here longer.
What hair?
But I must say, it's been a pleasure working with you, debating with you, and getting along with you, because that's the kind of guy you are. So on behalf of staff and myself, thanks you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Clint is sure.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Okay.
John?
Yes.
I just wanted to add my thanks as well. As Deputy Mayor, I've worked with you at the county as well, and I've appreciated your level demeanor. You never get too high, but you certainly don't get low either, and I've certainly appreciated that. I don't know whether I'd call it a mentor or not, but I have learned a lot from you in terms of running a meeting and reading the temperature in the room, and I've appreciated that, and I wish you all the best in your retirement, maybe a second retirement, as Jim has said.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's your third or fourth. I don't know how many careers you've had in the past, but I know you've had one significant one with the fire service, of course. But in any case, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. I've always figured it was more team than it was, individual, and I've enjoyed the team for sure. Yep. Okay. So, Clint, we want to talk to you about something. 8.6.1, I need a mover and seconder for Clark Construction Management. Jim and Brian, tell us a story. Not a long story.
Okay, this was a former gravel pit, as many of you likely know, and they have surrendered the license on it last year, I believe it was, and they want to basically turn it into a residential lot where they'll build a house, but the individual looking to build there is a car enthusiast, and therefore wants to build a big garage, for lack of a better word, to store his cars in. And with that, you have like they have to go a little closer to the exterior side lot line because of the ponds that are there in the EP areas. There's limited room for that, and the Conservation Authority has been out prior to them even coming to us to look at areas where they could do what they want to do. So they've done that. Then they came to us and we said, well, our policy hasn't caught up with the fact that you've now converted it back to, it's been formally rehabilitated by the MNRF. And so we have to remove that aggregate extraction designation in the OP and the zoning. Our update to, or our new OP, which hopefully will be approved shortly, is taking care of the official plan portion of that. And OPA 11, I believe, is taking care of the county version of that. And then it's just the zoning to remove that, and that's what this is doing. So this zoning will be conditional on those other two approvals from the county, both approving their OPA 11 and approving our new official plan.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I think we're familiar with this from the other meetings. Okay. I think there's a real potential with old sites like that. I do. For various things. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Mover and seconder for the bylaw to go with that. Michael and Jason, any discussion on the bylaw? All in favor? And that is carried. 8.6.3, that has to do with the new medical center, so I'll turn this and the next one over to you, Brian. And since I'm on the board of directors for the, here, I'll give you that then, because I put them all on there.
Yep.
And there's that. I'm gonna go over here.
Gonna find that.
8.6.3.
Agenda item 8.6.3, thank you, Lindsay. Planning report 2022-076-SP20-22 Dundalk Medical Center. Do I have a mover for that report? Barb and Michael. Clinton, anything to add?
I'm happy to bring this one forward because it means we're getting that much closer to getting a medical center in Dundalk, a new one. So I'm happy to bring this forward. We've gone through many revisions of this, and I think this is the best way, in my opinion, to develop this area. We've looked at stormwater management, and they've provided a stormwater management report and a drainage plan, which is part of this application. And I think it covers off the township well, but more importantly, provides a much needed service to the township.
Very good, thank you, Clint. Any questions? Barb?
Just a comment, Chair. I was having a conversation with a resident who could not understand what on earth we needed another medical center for when we have the Erskine Center and the Lions Medical Building. And I had to express that with our growth, those two buildings will, continue to serve in some capacity Dundalk, but that they've exhausted their capacity, that they want to expand the services, the health services that are available within Dundalk, and bring a more Markdale, Southeast Grey Community Health Center program or complex to Dundalk. I was surprised that this individual actually thought we didn't need it. So I am thrilled to see this moving in the next step and in the right direction. So
Good, thank you. Yes, it is definitely a good news story. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing it, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the bylaw regarding the same site plan control agreement, 8.1 or 8.6.4, bylaw 2022-150-SP20-22 Dundalk Medical Center. Someone care to move that? Barb, seconded by Jason. Any Clint, anything to add? Nope. Any questions regarding the bylaw? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. And I will turn this back to the mayor.
Thank you, and I have more coffee. So the system works. 8.6.5, site plan approval appointment. I need a mover and seconder. Brian? Jim? Tell us the story.
Okay. Bill 109, I was actually just in a seminar for the implementation of that bill. One of the requirements of that bill is to pass an appointment bylaw to designate an employee of the municipality to approve site plans. To speed it up, now there is a time limit of 60 days from beginning to end to approve them. As I was learning in that thing, there will be a further report coming on how we're going to deal with these new processes to meet these timelines with staff or maybe changes to fee structures or what have you. So this is one of the requirements. It's not an option, it's a shall do in the Planning Act, so that pretty much says it right there. I have tongue-in-cheek asked the CEO if he wanted to put his name on the top, and he said no chance. So it stuck with my name on there. But we'll make it work, and we'll try and keep people happy with the site plan process. So I don't expect it to change in terms of how we do things, in the sense of how I circulate and how I review things from a perspective of protecting the municipality. The part which I've tried to include in my graph there is, how do we include you guys? Because a lot of times you guys want to know what's going on too, and if it's just me approving that, you wouldn't get that chance. So right when we receive a complete application, what I'm suggesting is that it gets, in addition to all of the agencies we circulate it to, it also gets circulated to council. So at that time, and this is what I sort of need your opinion on here, is there's an ability or an option we could put in there to elevate it, to bring a report forward to council. If they're like, oh, this is an interesting one, or maybe this is a controversial one, or what have you, where, and this is what I'm specifically referring to, as maybe one councillor or 3 councillors or a majority of council can put in a request to say, we would like a report brought forward on this particular one, and then I can do that and bring it out in a report fashion. But how you do that, I'd like some feedback from you on that, whether you want just any councillor to be able to say to me, bring a report forward on that, or do you want a minimum of 3, or do you want a majority, or how would you like that done?
Well, doesn't seem to be an issue for me. I think one of the big things that you're going to have to take into, the council will have to take into consideration for this, is how to do that and still keep you within the timelines.
Yes.
And that's going to be a big thing. So, yeah. Barb.
Through you. So it wasn't until I read, this is a requirement. You are required to delegate authority. So that took, first question off the table. But I have a concern in that, because if we are required to have for a majority of councillors request a report, does that mean we've had a meeting that is not properly called in order to decide whether or not we, like, it's a delicate situation because technically if we're exchanging conversation and emails, we're having closed meetings, not properly called. So that was a red flag for me. And on the other end of the scale, we could have a term of counsel where you have a counselor who demands a report every time anyway, and drags it out and delays it out. So, you know, I've always enjoyed the fact that you bring a report that explains how you've mitigated the concerns expressed through the agency consultations. You show how this is, you know, meets all of the tests, or you. I am like really struggling with this one because it's often your report that helps us determine that this makes sense, and I'm not sure how that is going to be achieved, and how we mitigate I'll call it a road counselor who, you know, is opposed to on-farm shops. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first way you can do that is through it being more than one person being able to request it. And this is why I said, do you want one, do you want three, or do you want a majority? And the way I think you can get around it being a council meeting or what have you is if after the circulation you put the request, it's just a request to the clerk. And then if she gets three or four, or whatever, I guess if it's a majority, you would get four. She would then tell me, bring a report forward on that. Going back, I would suggest that before we even get an application now, there's going to be a lot more work. Before I sit there and say it's complete, there's not going to be this going back and forward to work with developers because the time doesn't allow that. It's a conveyor belt now. It's not a circle where you go back and work with them. So now, before you get on that conveyor belt, we're going to have time to review that and look at the application and make sure everything's done first. And then you go in there and you've got your, at the end, what I foresee happening is issuing a conditional approval. And that conditional approval will be subject to, I don't know, extra fees being paid for, a survey or an agreement being entered into with the municipality, provision of a letter of credit or something to that effect. That's what I see happening. So then there's a conditional approval that they have a year to meet the conditions on that site plan or whatever it is. That's how I see that working. So they'll get a conditional approval in the first 60 days, and then it's on them again. And the trick is if they make changes, because sometimes they get halfway through it and they'll say, well, actually, I think in our investigations we've discovered it works better this way. Well, there's no time on the conveyor belt to change that. So then you actually have to send them back to square one and say, no, you have to reapply and start over again.
So sorry.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So you do have the option to start the clock again.
If they're going to make changes.
If they come back, because a lot of times where people have expressed, you know, oh, it takes so long. Well, it's been sitting 3 months in their hands. You've been waiting for them to submit something else. So that's good to know. I guess my only concern is that your reports is our information that provides us with assurances that you've addressed the concerns that, you know, that have come through, you know, whether it's from the roads, whether it's from SVCA, whether it's from the county, whether it's, you know, all of that. And we won't have that. We'll have, well, here's the application.
And you might, as on the consent agenda, see the conditional approval sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's going forward.
Conveyor belt is right.
It wasn't really, a lot of planners are struggling with it. in that session I was just in, and one of the biggest criticisms that I heard several times was that maybe it's the province that needs to be the one to step up and issue comments back in a timely fashion. Whether it's MTO, waiting for comments for months from them, whether it's the MOE, waiting for approvals for new waste treatment plants or what have you. All of those things, they take months. And if we're supposedly on the clock, do we just ignore them? I don't think so. We're supposed to ignore everyone else, but them. Yes. What they would like. So I think there needs to be a bit of realization there. And then the last thing I'll say is that if they're expecting all of this housing and things to be built quickly, they need to provide the funds for the extras. So yes, you want all this housing built, well, if you want to spend the money for providing schooling and busing and all of that stuff, because that's part of it too, in addition to the hard services.
Right.
So, and we've said this in a petition to the province before. So this whole site plan process is just the tip of the iceberg, really. But I think we're on the right track here.
And I did have just one more. In your report, it says, or in the process of reading it, I'd like to know what is deemed a regular site plan versus a non-regular site plan, because a non-regular site plan would require council oversight. In that wording, that's how I interpreted that.
And so, if you look at it, you can have what's called a complex site plan, where it looks at many different things, and usually it's around a business or a large housing development or commercial development or something like that. That's fairly complex. But if it's a very simple site plan for, just as an example, I'm in a night shop out in the rural countryside where we're not particularly worried about space concerns, if there is an issue, because with the large lots, there's always a little bit of room there to correct things. In the urban centers, less so. So I think that's one of the criteria. But we're going to have to define those sorts of things for sure, and be seeing. It may be a break from council, but in the next couple of weeks, those are the kinds of things I'll be working on.
For the next
getting
term.
reports for the new council to deal with things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Times are changing.
Not seeing any other hands up. So good luck with that. All in favor? That is carried. And now a mover and seconder for the bylaw to go with that. Barbara and Jason, any discussion on the bylaw? Now's a chance to get out of this, Clint, instead of appointing you. Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Mover and seconder for Southgate official plan update. I almost put you down there for that one, Lindsay. Michael? And Brian. How about this one?
This one, as you can see, the county has finally come back to us with a list of modifications. Myself and the consultant, Ron Davidson, have reviewed them all in detail with the county planner, Liz Buckton, who's a very experienced planner. And we are okay with the changes. They're minor in nature and generally reflect wording for consistency points of view. But prior to me just saying go ahead, she would like a formal recognition by this council that you've seen them before they bring it forward for approval at a future council meeting of the county council.
Okay. Questions, comments time. Martin?
Yeah, Clinton, you mentioned in the OP about a community benefit plan, bylaw, and we don't have one. Would that be beneficial for the township?
Well, that relates to development charges and parkland dedication and collection of fees in that relation. We don't do it that way. We don't have a community benefit bylaw. Right now, we do it the other way, where we collect cash in lieu.
Or cash in lieu?
For parkland, or we accept the parkland where it is appropriate to accept it for the larger subdivisions.
Okay.
Not seeing any, oh, Brian?
Thank you, John. Clint, could you just summarize what the changes being proposed are that are related to density on development?
To density.
I'd answer no from the look on your face.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because we had talked about so many different approaches. From my recollection, and I apologize if my brain is a little rusty, we looked at increasing the density in the Dundalk area specifically to match or mirror what is in other larger fully serviced centers like Owen Sound and Hanover. To be, right now the county policy is 20 units per hectare.
Yeah.
And 44 Hanover, and for us, but in the city of Owen Sound it's 25. And so we said, well, it does make some sense for efficiency of servicing, which is cost a bundle, and protection of farmland and that sort of thing, to increase it to 25. So that's one of the changes. Another one is looking at lot density changes in the rural area, in the sense that when you're looking at lot additions, you're not necessarily looking at an amendment to the official plan if you don't increase the density. So you have a lot and you have another lot, you have to create a consent to add part of it to another lot. You're not increasing the density, therefore you wouldn't necessarily have to need an OPA. Whereas before, consent was a consent. If you were adding it to a different township lot, then it would count. So just a red tape reduction, I guess you could say. It's still one per 100 acres in the rural area, and it's one surplus farm severance in the agricultural designation, but no actual consents.
So that's the extent of any changes to density issues.
That was, yeah, based on what our previous discussions with this council were,
Okay.
when we put the policy forward.
Thank you.
Barbara?
So we already struggle when we are asking about, snow clearing and snow removal and placement with 20 units per hectare. When you get into density of 25 units per hectare, are we basically talking about multi-residential?
Yes,
as opposed to single-family dwellings or townhouses?
For the most part, yes. So you're looking at townhouses or multi-story.
Okay. Thank you.
And just what can I add one little bit?
I'll think about it.
Oh, let him talk.
Okay.
It also relates to the overall size of the area. So you may have pockets that are of a subdivision which are all single family and maybe don't meet that 25 units per hectare, but you may have a 80 unit apartment block
That make up for the difference.
that make up for the difference. So it's the combined area that you look at, that 25 units.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any more hands up, so,
Sorry.
okay, I see one.
Just, I want the conversation about density and where you have, that's more in the urban area, right? As opposed to a estate lot subdivision out in the rural area that's not on municipal services.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, now I don't see any hands up for a minute.
I'm good. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. So, thank you. Is your seminar still on?
They were finishing up questions. So
Oh, okay. Okay, then that puts us to item 14, the closed meeting. I need a mover and seconder to go into closed at 14, and it's for litigation or potential litigation, Municipal Act Section 239 2E, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, Municipal Act Section 239 2F. Subject solicitor-client privilege discussions on future communications with property owner. Personal matters about identifiable individuals, Municipal Act Section 239 2B, and labor relations or employee negotiations, Municipal Act 239 2D, and that's subject to the CAO succession, a verbal update. So I guess I need a mover and seconder. Jason and Jim, all in favor? And that is carried, and we're gonna have recess until we get over there.
Now we're gonna go in there.
Order. And we only discussed the two items that we went into close to discuss. And we have, what, two motions coming out of it? If you could read those, please, and
Yes,
then we'll get a mover and seconder.
Mayor Woodbury, so the first motion coming out of closed session for the first item, be it resolved that council receive the verbal report regarding solicitor-client privileged discussions on future communications with a property owner as information, and that council direct staff to proceed as discussed in closed session.
Okay, mover and seconder, please. Michael and Barbara. I'd call for any discussion, but we already did that. All in favor? And that is carried. And next.
The second item, motion coming out of closed, be it resolved that council receive the verbal update regarding the CAO succession as information, and that council direct staff to prepare an open session report for the November 2nd, 2022 council meeting to update the public on the status of the new CAO recruitment.
Okay, mover and seconder, please. Jim and Jason. All in favor? And that is carried. Confirming bylaw, mover and seconder, please. Barbara? Jim? Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. And Brian moves that we're going to adjourn at 1:56, and I was going to call for a recorded vote, but at 1:56, I'm not gonna. So thanks again, everybody.